Sunday. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of True Story Live. I'm one of the hosts, Jason Cripps. Happy to be here. And tonight's topic is Doubt versus Decision Part 1, Artificial Sweetener. And we'll get into that in just a second. But first, I will introduce, for those of you that do not know, the rest of the panel, and we'll start with my lovely wife, Jen. Jen, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great. It's been a wonderful Sunday.
It has
Sunday,
indeed. One of
Glad
the first,
to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the first shows we did, I didn't have the timing right, and it didn't catch. I think it caught one of the Sundays, so that was disappointing. But I think I got it down now. The timing of everything. I'm glad you're here, Jen.
Me too. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Also, we could not do the show without our friend from Australia, Glenn, who is also our producer and has written the first 3 of 4 shows that we'll be doing. How are you tonight, Glenn?
Not too bad. Good. Hell. Yeah, good, buddy.
Buddy.
We don't use that word here.
No. Mate, right? Mate is the one you use?
No, even that's a bit
Americanized.
old school. Oh, you might use it, but it's not as prevalent as people would think.
So what do you guys say?
Yeah, there you go.
I can't say it.
Uh-oh.
I might get bleeped.
You can say whatever you want.
You bastard. You say that?
To someone you like, you might say, "Hang on, you bastard."
Mm-hmm.
It's the way you say it. It's in the meaning is in the way you say it.
That's the key.
Yes.
Sure. Gotcha.
Okay. But good.
So if you,
all good. Go on, Jen.
So
sorry.
if you don't like somebody, do you say it nicely? That seems
Why
backwards.
would you? That seems dishonest.
So when you say an insult and it's said nicely, that means you like somebody.
Well, the more that you like someone, the more you endear yourself to them by putting them down.
Oh, okay.
It's reverse.
Okay, so if you compliment somebody, does that mean you don't like them?
No. It doesn't. It's more how you treat those people that you're familiar with and that you are close to. That's when the banter starts. Otherwise, it's just normal. If you meet someone for the first time, you'll just be as you would in the US.
Okay.
Well, that's good.
Learning about this stuff.
Me too.
Come here when COVID's finished in 2040, and how old will you be then, Jen? 80.
2040?
Yeah, you'll be too old then. You'll be too old. They won't let you.
80. Wow.
COVID's done. Done in 2040.
My maths is a bit out, Jen. Just sorry.
2040 would only be 20 years, right?
So you just do not know when people make jokes.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll leave you to get on with it.
We're learning. We're learning though. We're learning
the Aussie ways.
Yeah, the beauty of this broadcast is, for me, is that the 3 of us just talk amongst ourselves and happen to be recording it, and then if people show up in chat, then we involve them. So it's like people get to listen to a private conversation.
All right. Sounds good.
It does sound good.
There's been many conversations the 3 of us have had that I'm like, this should have been a show.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. That's good. So instead, we're recording it, and tonight's topic is no different. I'm actually pretty excited about it. It's an important topic, and it's one that, at least in close circles, seems to cause a little contention. And we're going to get to that. And I'm going to read Glenn's amazing write-up in just a moment. We'll give people a few minutes to come in, and then we'll get to it.
All right.
Meanwhile, so tonight is just our first broadcast in December, and I'm excited for a new month. It's the month of Christmas for those that celebrate that. I think Hanukkah is awesome. It might have already. I don't know what the date is for that, but I think that I'm pretty sure it comes in December. Maybe I'm just totally ignorant. Do you know that, Glenn? From from the Jewish side of your family?
The what?
The
We're
Jewish.
convicts, man.
The Jewish.
Did you say Jewish?
Yeah, I was just joking. I know you're not Jewish.
Nathan's asking if we could turn the volume up.
Whose volume?
All of ours, maybe?
I just turned mine up afresh.
I mean, I can turn mine up, but I had it at a sweet spot where.
Maybe he'll let us know.
Yeah.
While we're waiting, Hanukkah starts on December 10th and ends December 18th.
Oh, well, there you go. Thank you. See, now I'm informed. I'm not completely ignorant. That's good. Okay. All right. So it is a month of holidays, and for a lot of people, it gets a little bit colder. Hopefully, in some areas, there'll be snow. I personally love snow. Couple people are saying hello, and we'll get to them in just a minute.
Yeah, so they're saying the audio overall is a bit low.
Interesting. We haven't had this problem before. I don't know how to fix it.
Yeah, I thought it might have been just Nathan, but BB Truth also said the audio is a bit low. Maybe we're talking too softly. Hey, what's going on, guys?
Hey, how's it going? Well, we can definitely. I mean, I can turn my mic up more or get closer to my mic if that helps.
Yeah, let me see if I can turn my volume up.
That's weird.
If I turn my headphones volume up, maybe it turns my mic volume up. I don't know.
Glenn, this hasn't happened before. Is there a way on the OBS? Is there something having to do with the volume that might be?
Oh, they said it's good now.
Oh.
Yeah, I turned my PC master volume up.
Okay.
Okay. That might have been.
Oh, he is.
Might have been that. Okay.
Gia's ears have been damaged. Oh, we don't pay compensation, hopefully.
There we go. 5x5. It's perfect now. Okay, great.
Okay, yeah. He said Glenn's and fixed all three. Okay, cool. Thanks, guys.
All right. All right, Jen, let's say hello to the people that have shown up so far.
Hello. Good to Hey, people. I was jumping on into it. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
No.
Hey, Lon, Fisherman in a Box, BB Truth, Nathan, good to see ya. Gia loves Jesus. Great to see you, girl. Glenn. Who else in here? Somebody. Debbie S is here, and that's who we've got so far, unless I missed somebody.
Oh, great. No.
I think we're good.
Everybody. And we'll try to say hello to everyone as they come in. I like to try to get everyone in so everybody can hear the intro, but I don't want to go on too long. So we can get right into it. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We appreciate you. And before we get started, this particular topic, as I mentioned, can be, I don't know why it is. I wish that people could just have discussions about things and not have it be so contentious. So our desire is to just have a conversation. Like we said, it's the three of us having a conversation, and you get a chance to listen, and we welcome your feedback. So because of the chat, you guys get to comment and things like that. But our desire is not to tell anyone else what to think or to imply in any way that we have the corner on truth or that we know exactly how things work out, especially with this topic, because it is fairly complex. So we try not to operate in absolutes of any kind, but just to present the information, like I said, and have a discussion, which you guys are included. So that's our little disclaimer. Also, again, this is the third show written by Glenn from Glenn's perspective. So just keep that in mind when I'm reading it. Glenn and I and the three of us agree on a lot of things. We may not agree on everything, but I just say that so that you know whose perspective it's being written from. And then next week, it'll be from the perspective of Jen and myself. And then there'll be a fourth show from Glenn's perspective, and then it'll go to Jen and myself again. And so we'll go from there. So I'll just say a quick hello to Alex, who popped in after Jen said her hellos, and also Brother Dave. Glad both of you are here. Thanks for joining. Okay, so without further delay, here's the write-up. So tonight's topic, as discussed, is doubt versus decision, part 1, artificial sweetener. Welcome again to TSL. First up, we're splitting this topic into 2 parts and deferring the published week 4 topic, reconciliation versus estrangement, by 1 week. Tonight, we zoom in on life. Next week in part 2, C and J, Cripps and Jenn, focus on spiritual aspects and a whole lot more. Stay tuned. Meantime, are human relationships artificially sweet? What's real? What's illusion? How appropriate that No Doubt sings our title song. And the link is in the description. Please click on it and listen when you get a chance. Are self-worth, trust, evidence, doubt, and decision interrelated? How relevant is I can't seem to find myself and I'm only sure that I'm not sure? Definitions. Doubt is uncertainty. I'm not sure. I could be wrong. I don't know. I'm outside my frame of reference, etc. Doubt excludes transient thoughts. Doubt is one of the biggest impediments we face in decision making. Decision is a conscious choice to accept one option over another. Decisions are based on a range of factors, anything that assists to reach a conclusion. Self-worth is based on respect for self, an appreciation of the effort we make to be understanding, compassionate, and considerate in the world. It is not about being perfect. It is about being fallible, with honest intent. In our context, value of self is not measured by achievements, money, or material endeavors. This is a complex topic, particularly to consider the possibility that one's spiritual outlook, part 2, may be influenced by the way we perceive ourselves and the world. To keep this part 1 relevant, we're focusing on our relationship with self plus interpersonal relationships. TSL perceives self-worth as an intrinsic part of doubt versus decision. Hence, why might some people doubt themselves at every turn, and yet others seem to be able to cruise on by, confident in their self-worth? The suggestion here is, without self-worth, trust in self, etc., relationships will be artificially sweet and limited by doubt. For example, is it possible to trust another person at a level greater than you trust yourself? If one has a lack of self-worth and lives in doubt of self and others, will any amount of evidence persuade otherwise? Or is it that doubt and lack of trust in self is a state of mind? Think about it. In your life, is there any person, any relationship, any experience, anything that you have absolutely no doubt about within the framework of human imperfection? Or do you believe that each and every life relationship has an element of doubt embedded within it? No exemptions. Perhaps it is as simple as our relationships, the people we're attracted to, the ones that give us comfort, are a reflection of ourselves. I mean, what criteria do you use to decide whether a relationship is worth pursuing or not? Read the above question. It is our contention that any yes or no, accept or reject choice based on consideration of evidence is classified as a decision. Agree or disagree? Up for discussion and a lead to part 2 of this topic is, if you live with doubt, minimal self-worth, then you will likely seek evidence prior to making a decision about whether you should trust another or initiate a relationship with them. If you live in a place of no doubt of self, then you are able to trust another implicitly without any decision to trust. Where does that come from? Feelings, intuition, knowing, belief, faith, etc.? You tell me. Evidence is used after the fact as a confirmation. That's all. In summary, doubt of self is a requirement to make a decision based on evidence prior to trusting. No doubt of self allows for trust without evidence and not a decision. This begs the tough question. What if initial trust and subsequent evidence are not in accord? Where does that leave us? Frightened to trust in case we are wrong? We leave you with this quote. Maybe the journey isn't so much about becoming anything. Maybe it is about unbecoming everything that isn't really you, so you can be who you were meant to be in the first place. Paula Kahlo. I've said that name before, and I still mess it up sometimes. Kahlo. That's the way I say it. Thank you for listening and participating. As mentioned, next week, C and J are in the hot seat. No doubt they will have a lot of great ideas, and I can sit back and relax. Nice. All right, there we go. So another excellent write-up from Glenn. Glenn, we appreciate that so much. And as I just said, so next week it'll be our turn, and we will be coming from the spiritual side of things. So tonight, as said in the write-up, we'll be looking at from life and relationship side. Of course, we don't constrain ourselves. Some topics might lead into talking about a little bit of the spiritual side, but we're going to try to keep it in under those parameters for the most part. And then the only reason I'm saying that is if in the chat you have any questions that relate to spiritual matters, which we welcome, we totally welcome, no problem whatsoever, but we'll be spending more time on that directly later. All right, perfect. Just check real quick to see if anyone else came in. I think we're all good. All right, so we'll dive right into this. So as usual, Glenn, I'm going to ask you where you would like to start. Start with the questions, or you want to go over the definitions again to be sure, or what would you like to?
I think we should start with first question.
First question. Okay, so the first question I have, I don't see it up on the screen yet on your end, so why?
You're on delay.
Yeah, I understand.
Underlay.
Did we get there yet?
What's real? What's illusions? I'll find that on the write-up. Yeah, on this, I don't know why I would talk about this necessarily, but
I can move on if you want.
No, I don't want you to move on. I've got a little box that says live, and it tells us how long that's covering up the first part of it. So if you can help me out with the way the sentence starts. Oh, there it is. Meantime, got it. Okay, sorry. Little glitch in the way that I'm able to see things on my screen. So we got that covered. Okay, so the first question I have, meantime, are human relationships artificially sweet? What's real? What's illusion? Okay, so we'll answer the first part first. Meantime, are human relationships artificially sweet? Let's see. I'm just checking to see if there's anything before that I needed to mention. No. Focus on, okay, got it. Meantime, are human relationships artificially sweet? Does anyone want to start with that one?
I'll just say that I don't like artificially sweet human relationships.
No, it gives the impression of something else being substituted for what I would consider a real taste experience, if we're talking about a beverage, for instance. So be the same as in a relationship. We'd want things to not be substituted with something else to make up for something that's being taken out.
Yeah.
So, Jen, an artificially sweet relationship, in your opinion?
Are you asking me what that is?
Yeah.
Inauthentic. That's where my mind goes automatically. Uh, gosh, just fakery. um, Platitudes, just like
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of like just uh, just not being real, being inauthentic.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
But how do
Right.
you tell?
It literally makes my teeth hurt.
How do you tell though? How do you tell
If somebody else is being artificially sweet or
if,
me.
how do you discern between something artificially sweet and what's real? What is illusion? What
Gosh,
parameters? What guidelines?
that's a really good question. Well, I don't know if I know the answer to that. I'll have to think about that a few minutes more, but it did make me think of something. We went to a store to pick something up the other day and we called beforehand, and one of the girls that works at this place, she is just really sweet. And
Yeah, yeah, this is good. This is good.
what was her name? I can't remember her name.
Sabrina.
Sabrina, and I was like, "Oh, she's really nice." And Jason was like, I don't know if that's real. Like it's so sweet, it almost makes you think that it's not real."
Yeah.
And we kind of got into a little bit of discussion on that. It seemed genuine to me, but I've met people who it's over the top.
Yeah.
And maybe from Jason's perspective and his experience of meeting people,
Hmm.
that's how Sabrina seemed to him.
Yeah.
I do believe that people can genuinely be that sweet,
Sure.
um, but I don't know her well enough to know if it's just a facade, because
Right.
she's working and she's trying to make a sale.
Yeah.
And some people you really can't tell. Some people, it's just obvious, in their mannerisms and their uh, body. What is the word I'm thinking of? Body language.
Like
You know,
that's it.
yeah. And if you're with someone longer, like if you work with someone per se, like okay, say hypothetically somebody works with Sabrina and they're hearing her on the phone with us being super duper sweet, and then she gets off and she's rolling her eyes and being grumpy.
Yeah.
Then if I worked with her, I'd be like, oh wow, okay, that's a little artificial. But I think you definitely have to be around people a little bit more. You could make an assumption, and label somebody. Giving a little plug to last week's show, but
Right.
I'm trying to think. Jason, you go because I'm trying to think of how did you word that, Glenn? When you asked the question, what are the telltale, the signs, or what did you
Yeah.
say?
What's
What guidelines do you use to make that call? Whether it's an illusion, artificially sweet, real, whatever.
I think whether it's consistent. I think consistency.
yeah. I was going to say that you may not know right away. Like in terms of this particular person that Jen is sharing about with Sabrina that works in the store that we go to. I would never say that to her. I wouldn't ever talk to anyone about that except for Jen. Just my perception. I could be totally wrong. I mean, I've seen this because we go in there maybe twice a month. I've seen her on a number of occasions. She's always sweet. It doesn't mean that she's not genuinely sweet. It's just the feeling I get. But over time, if we were to spend time around here, I would never do that alone, of course. But if we were going to spend time around this person, especially away from the store, if that were a possibility, then we might see the true colors, and then a clearer picture would come up. So I think time tells the tale in every case. When you spend time around a person, if they're always sweet, maybe that's who they are. But I think the more time you spend around a person, their visage cracks a little bit. What if they're putting something up? Most people that I've seen, they can't keep it up for very long. There will be a situation that comes up where their mask slips. If you pay attention enough, that's my perception that they can't keep it up forever.
Yeah.
That's my answer to that. And before I go on anymore, I just want to say hello to Stephanie Trexler. No problem that you're late. We're glad that you're here. As we've said, we're glad when anyone shows up. So come late or leave early, whatever. course, we'd love to have everyone here right at the beginning and stay all the way to the end, but no problem whatsoever. We're just glad that you came. So thank you for being here. And also hello to Celine, who has not made a Baby Yoda comment quite yet. So we'll wait for that to come. And also Liam just popped in as well from across the pond. So Liam, we're glad that you're here. And hello to you as well. Okay, so my turn. I hope that answered that first question. From my perspective, the artificially sweet, because I grew up in the South, I mean, I'm born in Michigan and grew up the first 7 years of my life in 1 year in New Jersey and the rest in Michigan. And then we moved back a few times, but pretty much most of my life has been spent in this same area in the South. And in the South, I call it the, oh, bless your heart phenomena. And this is the idea in the South of you're nice to everyone first and foremost, and it's considered just part of the way life lives in the South. But when I hear someone say "bless your heart," my guard comes up. The hair on the back of my neck raises up because when you see people that say "bless their heart" to someone at church, then they come home, and then what you hear is a completely different scenario that doesn't sound like "bless your heart" to me at all. It sounds like something else. So
it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek. It's become kind of a tongue-in-cheek saying phrase.
Exactly. Exactly. It's like, oh, my daughter just got pregnant. She's 16. Oh, bless her heart. There's something more being said behind that than just what's being said.
Yeah.
At least that's my understanding, and that's my experience with a lot of people. Now, some people might say "bless your heart" and they really mean it. Not saying that everybody doesn't mean it, but generally that's an example of what I think is artificially sweet. And it doesn't just end there. It's people being nice at church potlucks and being friendly to person when you see them at the store and waving to them and everything, and then whispering under your breath, and gossiping with someone else about, oh, he's an alcoholic or they're having an affair, whatever. I just find it difficult when people talk like that to trust them. I think I would be more likely to believe someone that said something mean or ignored me or something. I would believe that more easily than I would believe someone that's being like overly sweet. So this person, Sabrina, she is always nice every time. And there's two things working in play there. One, that she's a manager in a store, as Jen mentioned. Her job is to manage things and to sell. And so why would a person not be nice? Why would they not try to be really, really sweet to people that came in? It wouldn't really help them to do any sales for sure. And even when I have called, she's really nice over the phone too, which you don't get that a lot. Maybe they're nice in person, but they're not nice over the phone, but she's always nice. Like I said earlier, maybe she's just a nice person. I don't want to live in a place of second guessing everyone I meet and thinking, oh, well, they're being fake. But as I said, I think that the more time you spend around someone, the more you get an idea of who they're really like.
Yeah.
Again, not able to keep the mask open or keep the mask over their face for too long. I think it slips over time.
What about, God.
Oh, one more thing. I think that there are some people, narcissists in particular, and that's a generalization, but there are certain people that are very good at keeping the mask on for a very long time and not letting it slip. But I would say even in that case, there are people that know. There are people close to that person that have seen them with their mask off, although they may not show it to everyone. That's all. Go ahead, Jen.
I just was curious as to Glenn's answer. I was curious as to his position.
Yeah, I went on kind of long, didn't I? Yeah.
No, you were great. No,
you're not saying that. Yeah, you're not saying I went on.
No, not at all.
Go ahead, Glenn. It's your turn, sir.
Yeah, Gia stole mine, but pretty well down the line. I think if you've had enough experience you pretty well can tell when someone comes to the table and they're not being themselves. They're just saying that, in other words, what they're saying doesn't line up with what they're projecting. And I think most people feel that and they get wary. Yeah, I think Gia said something, because if they come at you too sweet, you're getting apprehensive. I think that was not heard, but that's the word I'm putting on it. And I think that's true. I think there's a degree of discernment that you get as you, as I said, get more experience. And the real ones are the ones where, like someone, like I've had Nathan won't mind, I've had email correspondence with him, and he's straight up honest. Yeah. He tells you what he thinks and what he feels. Now that's all. Not someone who skirts around the edges and doesn't say what they think, and that is so exasperating to my mind. That's the illusion of a relationship. That's just full of crap.
Yeah.
And who wants that? Not me.
No, I don't have the time for it. I'll go one up on that one too. As far as Nathan's concerned, even if he's wrong about something, I would prefer that he puts it on the table and tells me exactly, straight up what he's thinking. And when they do that makes me want to trust them more. That what they're saying, even if what they're saying is wrong, it's what they believe or it's what they think, and there's nothing being hidden. And I can get along with a person like that, even where I disagree with them, more than I can someone that's just coming across as, I agree with everything you say, and it's just really, really sweet about it.
That used to be me.
You used to agree with everyone and just be really, really sweet?
Yeah, I just was a peacemaker in that sense. More of a people pleaser. Maybe not peacemaker, that might be the wrong term. Yeah.
Well, you're
just
still
not wanting to rock the boat. And I still don't like rocking the boat, but I definitely don't want to not play games, but just be authentic in my own opinions in a loving way, even if it disagrees with somebody else.
Sure. Well, you're still sweet, though.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Now, Glenn, I don't know if this is the comment you were talking to from Gia, but I agree with this too, so I'm going to read it anyway. She said above, I get nervous when people are too sweet. I like to see the cards on the table early on. Like I said, I don't know if that was a particular one, but that I agree with that completely. Again, cards on the table every time for me. I can deal with someone's cards on the table, even if I don't like the cards, more than I can someone holding the ace hole card, for instance, and being secretive about it or hiding it. So
I've got a question for Nathan, Jason. He just said, church encourages this deception. Does that mean, I'm asking Nathan, are you saying that the church encourages artificially sweet relationships? Is that what I'm hearing?
I have some things to say.
Yes, go, Jen, go.
I completely agree. Yeah. At least some, not all, but some of the churches I've been to. I don't know if we've touched on this before. It feels familiar.
You've talked about what you're going to say before, but it may not be in this particular topic.
Yeah, like artificially sweet in the sense of, dealing with people and, being friendly and welcoming, which is great, but it's just this push so much. My experience, I don't know if this has been Nathan's experience, but to the point where it becomes inauthentic and kind of fakery because there's so much niceties going on that it almost makes you afraid to be in a bad mood or need help or share some downer things, which you want to be able to share in church. You want to be able to talk about real life that's happening. And unfortunately, fake and inauthentic and artificially sweet, it pretty much, at least from what I've again experienced at some churches that I've been to and been involved with, it promotes fake.
Right.
It's like it's perpetual. It's like a snowball effect. Because it's just not real. I mean, niceties, being in a good mood sometimes and being friendly is real. But when it's all the time and there's never any humanness, that's, that's coming in, and it's balancing it out, I guess you could say. It's just, it's a deception. It really is, Nathan. Great word. Because that's not real life. We do sin, we do have bad days, we do fly off the handle sometimes. We complain some, it's a part of being human. So anyway, I don't know if that's what Nathan meant, but yeah, I've experienced that, Nathan, for sure.
I think anyone that's gone to church has experienced that, and I'll back it up by saying that anyone that's listened to the show at all or any of the broadcasts, I've talked about this pretty frequently, but part of my turnoff of the church was that people would act one way on Sunday when you see them at church or at youth group. I mean, I've been in youth group for a long time. I'm 51, but I still remember those experiences of having people on Wednesday night church service waving their Bibles around and talking about what a great Christian they were, and then you'd see them out on the weekends and acting completely different. Now, I realize that we're all hypocrites in one way or another. I just realized that I don't want to live as one. So you're seeing representation being presented like a performance when the church doors are open, and then outside of church, then it's completely different. And then so in that, people, in my opinion, not everyone, as Jen said, not every church, but a lot of people are artificially sweet to you in certain circumstances, and then when you see them out, it's a completely different thing. It's the same thing as someone blowing by you and almost running you off the road and flipping you off when they pass you, and then they pull in front of you and they have some kind of religious Christian bumper sticker or fish on the back of their car or a cross dangling from their rearview mirror. Something that's saying, "Hey, I'm a Christian," but yet they're acting in a poor manner. I couldn't think of the word.
Yeah.
Probably could have come up with a better one than poor manner, but it's just hypocritical, is what it is.
Yeah.
And artificially sweet. They're pretending to be something in one way, and then you find out that they're not. They're something completely different. So I think Nathan was right, and Gia with her comment was right. And I'm just scanning the chats to see. Gia loves Jesus says when all you sit on a pew, when all you do is sit on a pew and hear a sermon, shake the hand and go home, every relationship in the building will be artificial. Ooh. So I think what she's saying is if you just go in for the service and you're not having a relationship go outside of that, then it's likely to be artificial. That's good.
It's like going on stage, like a performance. I'm going to make my showing at church Sunday morning, Wednesday night for the potluck.
Yeah.
And that's got me covered.
Yeah. Yeah, you've put your time in, so to speak. That's great.
I asked Gia a question, Cripps. So, Gia, are you saying that the relationship between a married couple who goes to church will be artificially sweet?
Could be. I don't think that's across the board.
I don't think that's how it was meant, but
I think she's talking about. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think that, but that was the first thing came into my head was, gee, it's an encompassing statement. That was all.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked a lot about so far. We've talked with this question. We've talked a lot about relationships you have that like outside of yourself with people that you run into. But before I comment on that, she answered your question. I think to you, Glenn. By the time they're married, I think they are well past that, don't you think? Well, that's what I was going to get to. We're talking a lot about outside relationships, so we do want to put this into marriages and closer friendships. Can they be artificially sweet as well? And as Jen said, we want to be authentic. And I have run into plenty of people that in the relationship, it's just a performance there too. But like I said, when you live with someone long enough, I don't think you can keep the performance up for very long. You might be able to do it long enough to marry someone, And then you might, first year, maybe 2 years, you can keep it up. But I think beyond that, I don't think you can keep pretenses up very long. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Just because you're married, you're in closer proximity to someone, so it seems like that there would be many opportunities to see the mask slip if there is one. Now, if they're authentic, there's no need for a mask to slip. You're just seeing them, up front, everything on the table, no problem whatsoever. So there's that. Okay, so anyone else want to say anything about this first question before we move on?
I'm good.
Okay. The second part of the question we kind of addressed within the body of it. What's real? What's illusion? To me, what's real is what the person presents that's authentic. That's what's real. And it's difficult sometimes to determine that, especially in these outside relationships. As Gia said, if you're just going for the sermon, you're not getting to know someone in the same way that I was talking about Sabrina at the store that we go to. I'm only going to ever see her in that particular location. I'm not going to, I guess I could run into her at the store, another store, or somewhere outside of that. But I'm generally going to only see her in that one way. So I don't think that I'll ever be able to determine if she's artificially sweet or not, whether it's real or an illusion. I think sometimes we just don't know. So that's that. Okay, the next question is, are self-worth, trust, evidence, doubt and decision interrelated? Are self-worth, trust, evidence, doubt, and decision interrelated? And this is a more complex, so we may take some time on this. Now, we did do some definitions. I'll just do those again real quick since they're included. Starting with the first one, self-worth. Self-worth is based, this is our definition. If you guys in the chat have a different definition of this, we're open to hearing it from you. So self-worth is based on respect for self, an appreciation of the effort we make to be understanding, compassionate, and considered in the world. It is not about being perfect. It is about being fallible with honest intent. In our context, the value of self is not measured by achievements, money, or material endeavors. I think that's a good working definition. So again, if you've got a different definition of what you believe self-worth is, please pop it up for us in the chat. And meanwhile, our buddy Torben just said hello. So welcome, Torben. We're glad that you're here, as usual. Thank you for coming. Okay, that's self-worth. Now, trust, there's no definition of trust in here, but we've talked about that before. I think everybody understands that, what trust is. People may disagree on how you come to trust someone, but the definition of trust is obviously the opposite of doubt. You're trusting instead of doubting. So then doubt is next. Doubt is uncertainty. I'm not sure. I could be wrong. I don't know. I'm outside of my frame of reference, etc. Doubt excludes transient thoughts. Now, I'll touch on that briefly. As we said, I believe it was last week, transient thoughts are temporary thoughts or thoughts that come in for a moment and then they're gone. These are not things that keep you up in bed at night, wringing your hands, worrying about this, fixating on it. They're just thoughts that come in. We all have them, regardless of where we are on the spectrum of how much we trust something or believe something. They're just thoughts that come in, and they don't necessarily dictate what we believe or don't believe. Doubt is one of the biggest impediments we face in decision making. Now, I didn't comment on this when I read it, but that sentence I agree with 100%. I don't know that I could agree with it any more than I do. Doubt is one of the biggest impediments we face in decision making. How can we make a decision if we're plagued with doubt? That's my question, and I'm not saying I have an answer to it. Part of what I think is the more you believe something, the less doubt you're going to have about it. Once you really know that you believe it, then I think that once you're in that place, it would be almost impossible for anyone on the outside to get you to doubt something. no matter how hard they try. And we'll probably get into that more later as we dig in a little deeper. Okay, so there, I think I read all the decision. Oh, decision is a conscious choice to accept one option over another. Decisions are based on a range of factors, anything that assists to reach a conclusion. I think that's self-explanatory. Don't need to say anything else about that. So back to the question, are self-worth, trust, evidence, doubt, and decision interrelated? Anyone want to start out?
I'm going to say yes, but I don't know how to explain it.
Okay.
It twists my brain into a pretzel. How about
Well,
you
maybe-
go?
Sure. So the way I would answer it, I would go word for word. So I think the self-worth of a person does definitely determine and is related to the other things. So trust, evidence, doubt, and decision, they're interrelated. I think self-worth affects everything that we see. Whatever our view of ourselves, anything that comes from the outside, that is impactful on anything. For instance, if we have low self-worth, it's going to affect our relationships, it's going to affect our job, like what jobs we apply for. You think to yourself, oh, I'm not good enough for a certain job. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with digging ditches, but you'd say, well, I'm relegated to digging ditches because I can't do sales. I'm not a people person or whatever. It's just an example.
Yeah.
If anyone digs ditches, that's not a dig on you. I'm patting myself on the back for that, but probably shouldn't. It's not that good. Just saying that whatever your job is your job. But if your self-worth is low, then it is going to affect things. I think self-worth also affects your trust, how much you trust yourself, how much you trust others. And again, there are questions coming that will address that in more detail. So I'll let that one there for a minute. Evidence is huge. Evidence affects everything that we do. And evidence can be described as any information we take on board. And then it's up to each individual person to determine how to use that evidence, whatever it may be, to decide what's true evidence and what's false evidence. And again, over time, as we mature, I think that more evidence becomes clear. And as we gather it, as we're seeking, for lack of a better word, or we're looking at information as evidence builds up. Doubt. I think it's a great definition of doubt. I could be wrong. I'm not sure. Sometimes it's not just doubt. It's just there's not enough evidence. So maybe it's not that you doubt. It's that, you just don't know enough. Ignorance plays a part, and that's not a bad word at all. It just means you don't know. So, but if you don't know, that fits in the category of doubt. You can easily doubt something if you don't have any idea. Such as part of the definition, I'm outside my frame of reference. So that's in there too. Without these things, I see they're interrelated, the self-worth, the trust, the evidence. Without enough evidence, how can you make a decision about anything? I think people make decisions every day. Do I wear the red shirt or the blue shirt? That's a simple decision. And which way we drive to work, we're going to take a different way because you think traffic is going to be bad. It's a decision. And then sometimes our decisions have consequences. Like if you take a different way to work and because to avoid traffic, and then you get in an accident, and then you're always telling, this has actually happened to me. I actually get into an accident. I'm saying, well, if I didn't go that way, I never would have been in the accident. It's just something interesting that has happened. So our decisions affect the information that we have, and evidence plays a part of that. Yeah. So are they interrelated? I would say absolutely. All of those particular elements relate to each other in different ways, depending on whatever situation we're talking about. In relationships, since that's mainly we're talking about life and relationships in life, as I said, self-worth definitely affects everything. How much we trust something, we trust the person that we're in a relationship with. Do we trust ourselves? How much evidence is there that we can trust them? How does doubt fit in? Do I doubt the person that I'm with? My friendship, my marriage, whatever. People I work with, do I doubt them? And what's my decision going to be in relationship to these people? How much trust? Am I going to invite them over for the football game? Am I going to invite them to dinner? Am I going to be able to go to work all day and trust that the person I'm with at home is going to do what I expect them to do or what they say they're going to do? All those things are factors, especially in relationships. I think especially in love relationships or marriage. Well, everything really, friendships, the whole thing.
Yeah.
So that's my part. Do you think you answered, Jen, or do you go to Glenn?
Go to Glenn because I'm mulling something over.
All right, Jen's mulling over. Glenn, you're up. Are self-worth, trust, evidence, doubt, and decision interrelated, sir?
I'll come at this from two angles. The first one is attempting to write a show for TSL where you start with a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah.
As you're probably aware that it may not be that writing these shows take hours. It's not like just something you wheel out of your head and put on a piece of paper, that's for sure. It's but for this particular show, no matter which and every way I attempted to put ideas and thoughts down, it just kept coming back to one basic tenet, and that was self-worth. Because I thought everything was related to it. Now, you asked me to speak more. Well, I can speak from the point of having been in both places, at the lowest of the low, valueless, and at the other end of the scale. And I know that for me, you trust differently, you consider evidence differently, you weigh up your doubts differently, and that influences your decisions. So it's entirely relevant. All of them are interconnected to my mind with self-worth. I just can't see how they're not.
Right.
Thanks.
Sure. Thank you.
And I was looking at this in the form of like my relationship with Jason, who's my husband now.
Yay.
And when I think about that, and then I pose the question to myself: self-worth, trust, evidence, doubt, and decision interrelated for sure. With self-worth, gosh. Okay, so I got out of an abusive marriage that was for about 14 years. And if I hadn't had gained some self-worth, I wouldn't have left in the first place. And I sure as heck wouldn't have allowed myself to have such an amazing man as Jason Cripps. And I wouldn't have felt worthy to have someone in my life that treated me so well and was so kind and generous and loving and God-fearing and just all of the things that he is. So that plays a huge part. Trust, definitely. He had to gain my trust because getting out of a bad situation and being with someone who is very distrustful for so long, you get programmed into thinking, and then your whole world's colored, or it seems to be, where you just can't trust anybody. You're just on guard.
Right.
And then evidence, I'd say Jason show through God and himself. There was a lot of evidence that showed me that I could trust him and that he wasn't a narc or some horrible person just the long con waiting
Thank God.
waiting to treat me like a doormat. And I had moments of doubt in the beginning, thinking, oh my gosh, because, with abusive relationships that are like emotionally abusive, especially, and psychologically abusive, what was I going to say? You can have some doubt if you don't heal yourself first.
Right.
And you can repeat patterns, and through research and different talking with other people that have gone through, men and women that have gone through relationships like this, it's very common for people to get out of an abusive situation and then choose more, partner after partner after partner, the same kind of people. So, I had some doubt in the beginning, some fear, and then making a decision to through the trust, finding my self-worth in God, and dealing with the doubt, and making a decision to trust him and to be in a relationship with him. So I'd say, yeah, they're all very much interrelated for sure, because that bleeds into friendships as well.
Yeah.
relationships with family and friends.
Sure.
So that's my answer.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you for all the kind words that you said. I'm glad that you're not an artificially sweet person. Then I would, if I had doubt about myself or about you, then I would wonder if you were being honest. But I know that
Yeah.
you are being honest, and there's plenty of evidence that you are. You put things on the table, and you are who you are. Even we're all fallible, and I'll speak for myself. I have broken parts, and we've talked about that. And you accept me for who I am, and I accept you for who you are. So for
Yep.
me, it was very easy to treat you kindly, very easy. And I was careful because knowing what you were coming from. So when the doubts came up early on, and I believe it was God working in me that I was able to listen to you and understand that and take it on board and not freak out. Where in relationships, when a person, the other person is doubting something, regardless of why they're doubting it, if your self-esteem isn't in a good place, it's easy
Yeah.
to react,
Yeah.
like, why don't you believe me? I'm telling the truth, or to get angry. And I don't think I ever did that. So, and again, it's not because I'm some great person. It's because of God working in me, and me working with Him, and growing in my own self-worth as well. And again, we're going to be talking about these topics this week and next week too. So we'll elaborate more on self-worth and how that affects other things too. These are great questions. Thank you again, Jen, and thank you, Glenn, for your responses. Did look in the chat, and don't see any comments particularly to mention for this particular topic. There's a conversation going on, and it's great. And we always want you guys to talk about whatever you want. You don't have to talk about what we're talking about, just to let you know you have the freedom to fellowship and talk to each other about whatever topics you like. So that's great. Okay, the next part of this is how relevant is I can't seem to find myself. I think that's a great question, and it's still related. It's all in the same grouping: our self-worth, trust, evidence, doubt, decision, and related. How relevant is I can't seem to find myself? Jen, do you want to tackle that one? How relevant is it? Sorry.
Go ahead.
When someone says I can't seem to find myself, I think this is a huge issue, especially early in life. We were kind of discussing this a little bit today.
Yeah.
Asking the question, who am I? I mean, I think all of us have asked that question, who am I, as we're growing and learning who we are. It takes time.
I wasn't taught to ask myself that. And so I found myself I was a chameleon. I blended in with whatever groups of people that I was with. Gosh, I'm not sure that I'm not sure. I'm only sure that I'm not sure. That used to be me.
Yeah.
I know for me, the biggest thing has been it's a balance, and in my opinion, it's the Holy Spirit that keeps the balance, in the sense of when you're focusing on yourself and you're trying to find your self-worth within yourself and with God. I think people get really, and I've been here, where you're just really leery of doing anything to do with that, because I think it's a misconception that it can easily slip into being self-absorbed, just really into yourself.
Sure.
And I even think that there's been times in my life that I've so not wanted to be that person that I ignored myself altogether.
Right.
And that can be damaging, I think. I think it's good to know oneself. It's a journey. I think this is the two sides of one coin. I can't seem to find myself. I'm only sure that I'm not sure. Hopefully we're growing and learning every day and changing every day. So that I used to think that finding myself was like reaching some shelf on a steep cliff. And once I got there, I'd stay there. You know? I'm like, I've arrived. Um, but I've come to find out that again, every day I'm learning and growing and hopefully changing for the better. And that it's a journey, but
Yes.
not in particular to get to one point, you
Right.
know? Um, so in a way, and I don't mean this in a flamboyant way, but in a way, every day you're arriving because you're getting to know yourself a little bit more and you're getting to know God a little bit more and you're growing a little more.
Wow.
So that was huge for me because I think being in the mindset of trying to get to a certain point, to arrive at a certain point, there's so much pressure. And it's when you're living that way, the goal post seems to keep moving away. You're like, wait.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
anyway, I felt like I rambled. Maybe I didn't, but
You did
hopefully that makes
not.
sense. Okay.
You did not ramble at all.
Okay, cool.
I understand that, this is only our third broadcast and we took kind of a year off. So you're doing a great job, Jen. I'm
Thanks,
not
babe.
just saying that because you're awesome. So it wasn't rambling at all. I understood everything you said and I agree. To show you that I understand what you're saying, this idea of reaching a certain point, I mean, I think we all do that. In fact, I've talked about, I was a Cowboys fan. I'm not as much into football as I used to be, but I was a Dallas Cowboy fan. And back in the day, in the 90s, and John Dons will appreciate this because we had a rivalry. He was a 49ers. I'm sure he still is. He loves the 49ers. And I love the Cowboys, and they are definitely arch rivals. So we were friends, but when the game was on, we would be against each other, pretty much. And Troy Aikman was the quarterback in the 90s for the better part of the 90s. And he went to more than one Super Bowl. And he was in an interview and they were asking him, how it felt for him to make the Super Bowl. And the first one he went to, he said, "Is that all there is?" I mean, he has worked hard, practices and going to the gym and working out and injury and learn the playbook and all the stuff to get to this pinnacle, which is in football, the greatest pinnacle you could ever be in is to win the Super Bowl. I mean, it's what they all go for. You get a ring and you get money and you get fame, and in a lot of cases you get endorsements, which is more money, more popularity, more fame. And Troy Aikman said, "Is this all there is?" Now, I've heard that from other people too, other people that have really worked hard to get to a certain point, people that have gone to the Olympics and they've done all this training and they go to the Olympics and they get a gold medal. They come back, a lot of them, they come back and do it again. It's not enough. I mean, it seems like they're striving to get to a certain point, and then when they get there, it's like, is that all there is? Also, I can speak personally. I used to, and I got in a lot of trouble personally doing this because I used to think that marriage was the thing that the thing that I was reaching for on the shelf, like you were talking about, Jen. And then when I got married, that was going to be the pinnacle. Like I didn't really strive for millions of dollars. I didn't really strive to climb the corporate ladder or for fame or fortune. I wanted to be married and have a family. And guess what? I still do. And I have a family. But the first time around, leading into it, I was so excited about it because I held it up as this thing, as this unattainable shelf to reach. And then when I reached it, in many ways, I was like Troy Aikman. Now, I realized that part of it was because the person I was with wasn't for me. And there were a lot of red flags that I chose not to pay attention to. So for that reason, the marriage was not what I had dreamt it to be. So I reached that pinnacle and then I was disappointed. And I have other examples, but I think that was very poignant, Jen. And I think that a lot of people can relate to that. But particularly on I can't seem to find myself. As I mentioned earlier, I think we all face that. I mean, I use the example of when you're in high school and you're going to the guidance counselor and they're trying to help you with what college you're going to. But
That was just such a traumatic experience for me.
going
ahead,
to guidance counselor,
Yeah,
or
oh my gosh, because I didn't know what I wanted. I was like, I am completely floating out in an abyss. No
right.
idea what I want to do.
Well, the point is, you're not the only one. A lot of people, and even when they decide what college to go to, people change their majors all the time. I did. I went to school for communications, and then I took my first class, and I've told the story before, and I wanted to get into radio. And I thought, well, communications is a good way. I can even do some journalism stuff. And the professor told me, it wasn't the first day, but it was within the few first weeks that I was going to class. And that particular class was 2 times a week. So I would go into class and I would ask questions. And the guy told me, and this was back in 2004, 2005. I think, no, 2004. And he said, why are you taking this class, communications? And I told him, and he said, this isn't the way you're going to get there. He told me that the better way is to get to know people, networking in radio, and do it that way. Communications wasn't going to be a help. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is my major. And then I said, well, journalism is another thing that I'm interested in. He said, oh, journalism's dead. I mean, he teaches the class and he's telling me journalism is dead. And back then I had no idea what he's talking about. I understand it now. I mean, I'm not going to go off on a tangent, but journalism is dead.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me started. I mean, it's just, there's no true journalism out there anymore. The only journalism that's true are not owned by the huge conglomerates. All the major networks are owned by the same people, and that they control the amount of information that's coming out there. So that's not the way journalism started. Back in the day when papers came out, I'm going to stop. When papers came out, it
Back
was
in the day.
back in the day when the paper came out.
Sonny.
Yes. Oh my
Love
gosh. I love you. It should have been checks and balances. Journalism should have been, to keep government in check and keep leaders in check, and to do honest reporting, to keep the people informed. And now it's just all controlled. So that's all I'll say about that. The other part of it is, I'm sure that I'm not sure. I think in some ways that's a good thing. When we're dogmatic and we think that we know everything there is to know, I think that's a problem. Now I know the way Glenn means it, in terms of doubt. I'm only sure that I'm not sure. It can be a negative thing. I mean, there should be some things that we know for sure, or we believe for sure, especially if we're talking about life and relationships. I don't want to be unsure about my relationships. And now with Jen, I'm not unsure. I don't have any doubt about her, but there are other relationships I have where I have plenty of doubt. And I'm excited about some of the questions, so I won't spend much more time on this. Glenn, do you want to comment on this one? How relevant is I can't seem to find myself, and I'm only sure that I'm not sure?
They're the lyrics from the song, not to my mind. They're just totally related.
Tell us how.
Yeah, you can't just leave it there.
Oh, got me. I was concentrating on the chat.
Oh, that's okay. We'll give you a minute, but
We want to hear your thoughts, Glenn.
Yeah, we want you to talk. I mean, we appreciate all the time you put into the write up, but there's more involved, buddy.
Oh, geez, he's caught me short here. It's just a mystery, really. If you can't sort of fathom where you're at, obviously you're not sure, are you, what you're about? I mean, it's just, to my mind, it's a different way of saying the same thing.
Yeah.
But it means the same. It means you're in a place where you're just uncertain, and hence will influence when you come to make choices, decisions, trust, etc. Like up further in the paragraph. I think it's just a continuation of the whole paragraph, and it is very much related.
Okay. I mentioned John Dons, but I didn't say hello to him, so I'll welcome John Dons. Also, Annette Sandrock came in when I was going on that long diatribe there. So welcome, Annette. Also, Janet. We're glad that you're here as well. And Daryl came in too. Daryl, I love you. I love everyone, but Daryl especially right now. He has a special place in my heart. So I'm glad that you're here, Daryl. Thank you for coming. Okay. So we can pass the definitions. We went through those, the first set of questions. Definitions are there. So getting to the next question, which on my write-up is, and make sure that I'm right about this, Glenn. Why might some people doubt themselves at every turn? Is that the next slide that you have?
Hang 5. When you skip, we'll just have a quick look. I think the next one is up.
Okay, I don't want to skip.
If one has a lack of self-worth and lives in doubt.
Go ahead and read it.
It's I don't know if this is correct, but it says, "Why might some people doubt themselves at every turn?"
That's
and
what
yet
I have.
others seem to be able to cruise on by confident in their self.
There we go.
Is that right?
All right.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll post it.
So there you go. Why might some people doubt themselves at every turn, yet others seem to be able to cruise on by confident in cruise on by. Sorry, I read it yet. Cruise on by confident in their self-worth. So whoever wants to start with that. Why might some people doubt themselves at every turn, and yet others seem to be able to cruise on by confident in their self-worth?
Okay, so if somebody, I'm just going to parallel this with God just to kind of make a point. If somebody doubts themselves at every turn, it could mean that they don't know themselves.
Ooh.
Because if you doubt God, it may be because you don't know him.
Whoa.
So I think knowing yourself is a huge key into not doubting yourself. And so maybe when it comes to you seeing other people that cruise on by confident, maybe it's because of their self-worth and self-knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate using these terms because I feel like for me, from a spiritual aspect, the new age, there's a lot that, knowing oneself, and it's still, I still believe it's a thing of God that he created us to be able to look inward and to be self-knowing and what's the term we use all the time? Being introspective. Yeah. I think it's a huge key in our relationship with God. I think it's a huge key with relationships. I think it's a huge key of healing from past traumas and hurts and wounds and disappointments. And if you're not doing that, I think you're skipping over, in my opinion, you're skipping over a huge part of the puzzle of a relationship with God. We can get more into that next week, but that just hit me. I was like, whoa, okay.
No, that's good. It's a kind of a preview of more of what we'll be discussing in more detail next week. So no problem at all. As I said at the beginning, it's difficult to talk about these topics without some of that sliding in there because our mindset obviously includes God in it. So, but we'll dig deeper into that later. But I get your point, and I thought that was lovely. My answer, why might some people doubt themselves? And I would agree with Jen. And I would say that a lot of the problem is doubting yourself first. Most of all, at least for believers. I mean, this wouldn't work for unbelievers because they don't believe in God at all. So I'll set that aside. But so I'll just say, from a person's perspective, if they don't believe in themselves, then the doubt sets in. You doubt yourself. And then in turn, you doubt other people. They are very much the same thing. So if you doubt yourself, then you're going to doubt other people. I don't know how you can trust other people and not trust yourself. I think that would be very difficult. Now, I can see if you trust yourself, but your experience with other people is that they're not trustworthy. I can see that. It may not be the way that we should operate, but I understand it. Trusting yourself is important first, but it doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to trust other people. Now, later in the write-up, because of some of the questions Glenn's written, we'll dig more into that. So I'll leave that there for now. But I don't know a whole lot of people that just cruise on by confident in their self-worth. I know a few people that I feel like are confident. Sometimes they may appear confident, but then you get a conversation, get them alone, and you hear a completely different thing.
Yeah.
This has happened to me. I remember back in high school, found out later he was my cousin. I didn't know this at the time, but we're related. He's like my fourth or fifth cousin somehow. But at the time, he was just a friend in my high school when I went back to Gladwin, Michigan. His name was Brian, and I didn't want to be him. I've never been like that. But he had a cute girlfriend, and he was the quarterback of the football team, and he was popular and all that. And I didn't like strive for popularity. I was popular in a completely different way, just with different groups. I wasn't just one group. It was I may have talked about this before, but it does relate because I worked in the attendance office as a senior, and I went into all the classrooms and picked up the absence slips, that all the teachers would fill out once class started, who was there and who was not there, and drop messages off and things like that. It was part of the job that I was doing in free period for an elective to help me graduate. And I enjoyed it because I got to visit all the classes and people knew me like that. And so that was fun. But anyway, Brian was someone that I looked up to, and I thought, oh, I want to be this guy. And we got to know each other. And back then we would do what was called cruising. I don't know if they still do it. I would assume that they do, but you'd get in the car and drive up and down the same street, and other people would park their cars and turn the music on. And it was a very teenager-y thing to do. And I would drive around in his brand new pickup truck, and we would just hang out and talk. And he told me that he doubted himself. He didn't use those words, but he's talking about his self-esteem, and we're talking about the big game coming up, and says, I just don't know if I can do it anymore. And I said, well, yeah, well, what about your girlfriend? So I don't know if it's going to work out. I mean, this was a person that I looked up to and thought that he was presenting himself as being very confident, cruising on by, confident in their self-worth, and finding out that he's not. This is just one example. There are plenty of people that I've met that I look at, and from the outside, they seem very confident. But when you you peel the onion, so to speak, and get down below that, you hear a different story. So I think it's more rare to find someone that's totally confident in their self-worth than it is to find someone that's struggling. That just may be my opinion, but that's kind of my answer for that. So to recap shortly, if there's doubt of self or there's low self-esteem, I think it does affect everything else. It affects relationships. It affects the person's view of themselves, certainly, and of other people, and of what kind of jobs they go out for and things like that. At least it's been true in my case. Okay.
All right. Glenzo?
Glenn.
My turn. Okay. Well, I think most people, pretty well nearly every, if not everyone, at some point starts from a place where they doubt themselves, and then they're faced with a choice. Okay, so first I'll say I think there are a number of choices. First of all, some people, I believe, have comfort in doubting themselves. It's a place that they sit in, and they have no desire for various reasons to want to even be able to be confident in their self-worth. So number one, there's a confidence base for some people. They see self-worth as irrelevant. Number two, there's a group of people who are not happy with the situation of doubting themselves, and they want to turn it around, but they can't do it. They don't know how. Well, it is simply too difficult to comprehend or to process or to get assistance, or for whatever reason, they can't turn it around. They want to, and hence they live with the distress of lack of self-worth. Sorry. Now, if I put myself in the third category, and I was definitely in this category, and I disliked it terribly. I realised, and it took me a long time, I have to say, to nearly 40 years of age, to realise that it was making me feel bad. I just thought my potential to actually live in the world and enjoy it was not going to come if I continued the way I was going. So I had to break out of it. How did I do that? Well, I have to say your mum was very incidental in helping me do that, and therapy, and it is incredibly difficult. It's not a thing that you sort of notice necessarily that it's happening, but all of a sudden one way you wake up and think, hey, I'm different.
Right.
And from my point of view, it's the difference between basically it's meant having a life and having relationships in this part of my life that I couldn't have even dreamed about having in the previous part. So that's what I'm saying. It really depends on the individual and how you perceive it, where you wish to go, and the willingness to put your hand up if you can't sort of find the path by yourself.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
That's the answer.
Thank you, Glenn. Appreciate that. That was great.
Do you think, Glenn, that people can't do it because they don't feel like they're worth it? Because it does take some work, and it can be very painful to figure out what's behind, somebody not having self-worth.
Well, in order for you to move from the place of lack of self-worth to self-worth, you've got to make a tremendous number of admissions. The first one is that everything you've thought was real, in fact, was not.
Yeah.
Every decision, every turn you've ever made is now questioned. That is extremely difficult when you look back and say, oh, crap, have I wasted 20, 30 years of my life, rather than what can I get if I change, and what does the future hold? Is the glass half full or half empty?
It's disorienting.
Sure.
Oh, it's very demanding. I wouldn't say for an instant this is easy. It is incredibly difficult.
But at the same time, it's like, okay, if it's turned upside down like that and you're looking at it like, holy crap, it's asking yourself, okay, do I want this to stay the same, or do I want it to change? Perfect example. But before I left my horrible situation, I had many conversations with you, and got faced through our conversation with okay, if nothing ever changes, am I okay staying in this hell? And it's slowly killing me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was faced with that reality. And faced with, if I didn't leave, it was going to be more of the same until I die.
Right.
That was a pretty huge pill to swallow. But I'm glad that I did, because I was in delusion land before.
Yeah.
Thinking, I was hanging on to hope, and just not living in reality with what actually was going on. And what it was doing to me. I just was in complete denial. So.
Well, thank God that you're not in denial anymore, and you certainly, through those conversations, you were able to see that the situation you were in was not good for you at all. I mean, worse than not good for you. It was bad, horrible.
Yeah.
But Jen, you said, and I think you confirmed, getting to that place that you now was incredibly difficult, and it required just going over the same concepts time after time after time, and many times with no breakthroughs. It's a step-by-step process.
Yeah.
And someone needs to, I think that's the other part, is that if you're not confronted with it, how do you even know what you're doing in the first place? It's only sometimes that people on the outside can look at you and say, hey, do you realize what's going on here?
Yeah.
Well, I've experienced that too. And before I get onto that, I would say that even in looking at you, Jen, early on, Glenn and I could see it clearly from the outside. And as Glenn said, going over the same things over and over, and there was no breakthrough. And you actually came to it faster than either of us expected when it was all said and done. It may have seemed like it went a long time, but Some people, as you mentioned earlier, Jen, in relationships, sometimes a person can get out of one bad relationship and then go right back into another one, thinking it's going to be better, and then it's worse.
Yeah.
And
And that, yeah.
they
Go ahead.
repeat this pattern year after year after year. I mean, some people, 16, 20, 30 years, they go through the same things, and they aren't able to see how bad it actually is until someone comes along and sees it from the outside sometimes and says, hey, what are you doing? Like, do you not see how damaging this is for you?
Yeah. And I'm thoroughly convinced it's people that don't gain their self-worth that are the ones that keep making the same mistakes. Because if you don't ask yourself the hard questions and ask why did I allow this to happen, or
Mhm.
get myself in a situation, or why didn't I leave earlier, or why did I choose this person or this situation? Why did I choose to do this or that? If you don't pull it apart, you're just bound to make the same mistakes again. And it takes finding your self-worth to even dig into that stuff, to know
Yeah.
that you're worth doing the digging.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the area, just to be transparent, for me, I did not see certain things in my own role in my family that you two saw, that Glenn and Jen saw, and they brought it to my attention, and I saw it pretty quickly. Did some research. I watched some pertinent videos on the topic and my role in the family and things like that, and how it's being treated. And I certainly was aware of some of it, but not aware that I was perpetuating this, that I'm responsible in part because of the way I'm being treated. Because I'm not putting, as Glenn says, I'm not putting my hand up and saying, hey, I don't want to play this role anymore. And it took an outside view for me to actually see it from that perspective as well. And once I saw it, and it may take years for a person to disentangle. I don't know if that's a word. It's the one I'm using. To untangle is probably better. Untangle themselves from these cords that tie you up and keep you down, especially when it's related to family. And we could do a whole broadcast on that, but I'll leave it there. I have other great questions to get to, and I don't want to run out of time here. But before we move forward, I want to say hello to Journey's Wake. Welcome. And he made a comment I think is worth sharing. Doubt is an obstacle we face almost every day. And here's the important part. Knowledge has much power over doubt. Then he says, hi, everyone. That statement right there, that's the bottom of it. The object, knowledge, your knowledge, just like Jen's saying, she wasn't aware of it. When she became aware of it, that's knowledge, that's evidence. We mentioned closer to the beginning what evidence is and how it's interrelated. So the self-esteem is a part, the evidence is a part, the doubt is the part, and then the decision. Mm-hmm. They are interrelated. So with the more evidence that comes through, the more knowledge, it's vitally important to a person to have that.
Yeah.
And the more knowledge you have, it does remove doubt. And we'll get into more of that in the spiritual context of that, because that is huge. Thank you, Journey's Wake, for that comment, because that helps me in our preparation for next week, because that topic is this hasn't been too bad when you're talking about relationships in life, but when you get into the spiritual aspect, gosh, it's caused division in certain circles, and we're not going to do that here, but just want to be very careful how we handle that one.
And I don't know if I said this earlier, but with you reading Journey's Wake, his comment. So if you doubt yourself as a person, which bleeds into all kinds of things.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean everything.
Yeah.
Knowledge has power over doubt. So do you guys believe that knowledge of yourself can overcome self-doubt?
Sure. Yes. Yeah. Knowing yourself more can help you not doubt yourself. I mean, I think a lot of people don't know themselves. They're in that place. I only know that I don't know. They're asking the question, who am I? And it never gets answered. Oh, I have it. I can't seem to find myself. I mean, how many times have people in their life, but some people wait till they reach a quote unquote midlife crisis before they start getting to know themselves. I think life has a way of putting you into a situation where either you're going to do it or you're not, but it gives you the opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
And then so if you have doubt of self, I think there are plenty of opportunities for you to have evidence or to have knowledge come in and change that for you. But you have to be willing. You have to be willing to do introspection, be willing to look at yourself and do it honestly.
Why do you think, and I don't know if this is just me, because every time I say words like, self-knowledge or knowing yourself, I physically cringe saying it out loud because I feel like it has such a bad rap. And I'm assuming that it's the new age stuff, but it could be like it just was never taught to me growing up, and it was never really talked about in church.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think there's this like cringy sort of feel when when we try to talk about knowing oneself? Like, I don't know what that is.
I
Maybe
have
it's just me. I don't know.
no, it's not just you. Actually, Glenn and I have been talking about this in Messenger over the past several days in preparation for the show. You mentioned one part, the new age stuff. I mean, it's all about self. It's all about God is in you, and they don't mean the God of the Bible. They mean just some intrinsic, universal collective, force that's in all of us, and you tap into your Kundalini and the third eye and all that stuff, and you have this power in you. You're God's little g, and you're one with the universe and all that. And Glenn and I have been discussing that. You mentioned that you didn't hear about it in church. Yes, churches. I've never been in a church that teaches any love of self or introspection. Now, again, this kind of ties in the spiritual side, which we'll talk more about. But because of certain verses in Scripture, they take it to mean, it describes the heart as being desperately wicked. How can you know it? And so people just consider themselves, not worth anything. And we'll get into that, like I said, next week on the more spiritual side. But it's not taught in churches because the focus is, and it should be on God and the Bible and things like that. But we're worthy, even from a believing perspective, even from a God perspective. God cared enough about us to send a son into the world to die for us. He sacrificed his own son, who is perfect. We're not perfect. The examination of self or self-worth, even, I think it's cringeworthy because they haven't talked about it in church. And it's not talked about very many other places. I mean, it's not, at least where I've seen. I know that in the 80s, I remember the topic of self-esteem. I remember hearing about that, but it's just kind of said in passing, oh, well, you have low self-esteem. I said, well, how do I get high self-esteem? How do I get that? My parents certainly didn't know how to teach me how to have good self-esteem. And that's in part because they didn't have good self-esteem. I mean, each particular generation, maybe there are some generations that have a higher self-esteem. I don't know. I mean, that would be a completely different discussion. But I think, like I said, I think it's cringeworthy because it's from a believer's perspective, again, because the Bible represents sin and represents how evil our heart is. So the idea is that we're just garbage. But God's not. But even in that, when it comes down to it, God cared about us enough to rescue us. So there has to be some worth. And I think that ties more into the spiritual side. I don't know if that helps.
I'd love to talk more about that next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guess what? You get to help me write it. So we can stick that sucker right in there and talk more about it. Journey's Wake says, look inside, seeing yourself for what you are, then learning and growing from that. If you choose to do so, not everyone wants to grow. Whoa. Wow.
Say that one more time.
Yes. Not everyone wants. Yes, that's right. Not everyone wants to grow. Look inside, seeing yourself for what you are, then learning and growing from that if you choose to do so. Not everyone wants to grow. That is such a good point, Journey's Wake. Thank you for that. Yes,
Yeah.
there are people that just are, they can't be happy. They can't be happy, but for some reason, they're not willing to look at themselves. They're not willing to do introspection. And even in church circles, there are a lot of people that just think they're garbage outside of God. And even when they have God, or they say that they have God, there doesn't seem to be much change. They all they are then is a sinner saved by grace, and it doesn't get deep inside, so it changes who they are as a person. I've seen that many times.
Yeah.
So it's a complex
I can't
situation.
imagine living that way. I love to learn, and I'm not boasting.
No,
It delights me.
I don't know that you're capable of boasting, John.
Oh my gosh, I love to learn. And I don't like making mistakes. Something that Nathan mentioned earlier, he was saying that he likes to do things perfect the first time or not at all, or I can't remember exactly what he had said. And I've been there where you just like I'm an artist, and when I learn new mediums, I want to be the best at it like within an hour.
Right.
And a lot of times it's just not realistic. Uh but yeah, that just makes it harder. But I've learned through many things that okay, something that's worth it is worth putting in the time, and that can go for so many things. It can go for um, gaining your self-worth and knowledge about yourself. It can play into healing, it can play into things that you want to learn.
Mhm.
um, so anyway.
Thank you, Jen. That's great. Okay, so we'll move on to the next question, unless anyone has any comments to make about that. Glenn, you responded. Yeah, I believe you did. I don't want to leave anyone out there. Yep. Okay. Is it possible to trust another person at a level greater than you trust yourself? This is such a great question. I'll go first on this one. Is it possible to trust another person at a level greater than you trust yourself? Now, this does tie into what we're going to be talking about next week. But in preparation for that, this is part one. We're going to talk about part two. We're trying to keep it in the parameters of, relationships and on the living life side. So I'll just mention this in passing. As Glenn and I have discussed, from my end, I do feel like it's possible to trust God more than another person. But in life, if you don't trust yourself, I do not see how you can trust another person. I don't see how it's possible. Now, that's just my opinion. I'm not saying it's impossible. So if anyone in the chat wants to discuss that more, or you disagree with that, then please, you are very welcome. It's not going to be an argument or anything. It's just going to be a discussion. So please put it in the chat. Explain to me how it's possible for a person to not trust themselves, or I'm sorry, I'll frame it in the way the question's phrased. Is it possible to trust another person at a level greater than you trust yourself? So you're trusting someone else outside of you more than you trust yourself. How's that even possible? Again, I'm not saying I have an answer. I don't think it's possible. I just don't. Except in relation to God. But even there, if
Is it
you
limited?
yeah, because isn't the way that you see yourself, doesn't that affect how you see God? Don't Wow. I mean, that one's just, to me, that's a complex and deep question.
Yeah.
So for the sake of living this life and on a personal level, I don't think it's possible. I don't think you can trust someone at a greater level, because then if you did, let's say you don't trust yourself, or you trust someone else at a greater level than you trust yourself, you're basing your trust on someone else and what they do. So what happens if you do that and they fail you? Which they will. People
Yeah.
fail you. They're not perfect, as Glenn said in part of the definitions. It's not about being perfect. Okay, I can take that on board. It's not about being perfect. We're fallible. Agreed. So you're trusting someone else more than you trust yourself. Do you know that you're fallible? I know I am. I failed many times. Now, the more I grow and change and mature, I feel the less failure there is. So, anyone else want to? I'll stop there. I can go on probably, but I think I made it clear. I don't think it's possible to do that. Jen?
Yeah, I don't think it's possible either, but this has got me looking back and thinking, okay, I didn't trust myself. So the trust that I had in other people that I thought it's like, did I think I had trusted other people and I didn't really? It's definitely shifted, comparatively, after gaining self-worth.
Mhm.
Now I know I trusted God. I clung to him in like the worst moments, which was a lot. But I will say that since gaining my self-worth, my trust in God has, in my relationship with him, has blossomed. We'll talk about more of that next week.
Sure.
But it does make me wonder, I wonder if what the trust that I was feeling for other people when I didn't trust myself, I wonder if that was real.
Wow. Was it an illusion?
It could have been. It's
Yes.
just got my mind churning, which I like.
Yep. That's great. Okay, Glenn, is it possible to trust another person? I know you're in the chat, so I'll read it again just to give you some time. Is it possible to trust another person at a level greater than you trust yourself?
In my opinion, no. It's
Okay.
pretty definitive no, and I can only base it on my own relationships, really. I know they're totally different from a place of lack of self-trust and to the other side of the fence. The relationships are totally different. The others were dysfunctional in the extreme.
Yes.
Not now, though.
Right.
That's it.
That's good. That's good.
Perfect. For example, if I came into this relationship with Jen, I didn't trust myself, but I trusted her. Again, the relationship would be based on my trust in her and that I don't trust myself. How can she trust me if I don't trust myself? How would that work? So then she's carrying all the weight in the relationship. She would have to coddle me because I'm not trusting myself. I mean, there are times that I don't trust something about me. I mean, there are transient thoughts or there are moments that I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. Oh my gosh. And I've determined that's because of the way I was raised. And it does get better. Again, as I grow and mature, the more I trust. But it's tenuous. It's a difficult situation.
Yeah.
So I saw a comment that I want to read, and I have to find it because it was pretty good. Nathan said it, so I'm looking for Nathan. Guys, just bear with me for a second. Sorry, there's radio silence or dead air because I'm looking for this comment. But it was good. And then Gia responded, said it's the best comment of the night, and I lost it.
Okay, I am helping you find it.
Yeah, if Gia loves Jesus, say it's the best comment of the night. Oh, there it is. I got it. So Nathan says, I'm not.
Is that Glenn laughing?
Yeah.
Oh, I was just laughing at Gia's comment. She has a good sense of humor. That gives her an extra bonus point.
Bonus points for Gia. Nathan says, I'm not into introspection anymore. I already know what's there. It's not good. And then Gia Loves Jesus says, Nathan Gruber, you won the best commentary of the night. So my question would be, I mean, what that tells me, and Nathan, you would have to fill this out more for us, but it says that what you see in yourself isn't good. Now, I understand, again, this would be better discussed more in detail next week from a spiritual perspective, but from a personal life perspective, you're saying that when you look at yourself, it's not good. So say more about that if you like. And I would also hear from Gia why she thought that was such a good comment. That's interesting. What she like?
Because that could play into what we're going to talk about next week.
Yeah. So
On the spiritual side.
right. So tonight, this is very much kind of a springboard for what we're going to talk about next week. So any comments you guys make will be taken on board. I'll go through and look at the chat again when I have more time to do that, rather than just trying to read the questions and stuff as well. Okay. Did we all answer that question?
I think so.
I think so. Okay, next one is, if one has lack of self-worth and lives in doubt of self and others, will any amount of evidence persuade otherwise? Or is it that doubt and lack of trust in self is a state of mind? If one has lack of self-worth and lives in doubt of self and others, will any amount of evidence persuade otherwise? Or is it that doubt and lack of trust is a state of mind? Great question. Anyone want to tackle that big one?
I think it is a state of mind. And I want to say Glenn mentioned this earlier. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, I think it was Glenn. Where if you're a searching kind of person or introspective, maybe not even, I don't know what the word is, introspective meaning digging into yourself, but just digging into things in general. If you're a digger,
Yep.
I think the potential of changing that mindset is there. But some people just get stuck in the mind. I do think it's a mindset. I don't think some people I don't think realize it is
Right.
a mindset.
Sure.
And that it can change. It really can. And it's
can.
a huge thing. Gosh, when you realize that.
Wow. That was
That's my
great.
answer.
Yeah, that was great. I completely agree. First of all, I agree with that part. That is a state of mind. It absolutely is. That's where the battle is. Even in spiritual terms, your soul, if you're a believer, your soul is quickened by God. The part, your thought, will, mind, emotions, and all that are your soul. That's what's being changed. What the part of you that does the feeling and the thinking and all that, that's the soul. And that's where the state of mind comes from, in my opinion. Now, people argue that. There's plenty of argument out there. The Greeks argue all the time about this, the difference between the soul and the spirit and all that. So you may disagree with me, that's fine. But that's what I think. So the state of mind, that's where you either doubt or believe something. As a believer, your spirit believes fully. Once you take the Holy Spirit on board, and again, we'll talk about that more. But the mind is where the battlefield goes. That's where you're able to doubt something or believe something. So, I do think it can change, but I don't know how it can change without you taking a look at it. It's like having a splinter and it's infected,
And you're ignoring it.
You're ignoring it, so it just stays infected.
Yeah.
Now, someone would say from the spiritual perspective, well, when I become a believer, God takes all that away. Well, I would argue that sometimes he wants to work with you on it.
Yeah.
Now, some people, I think he does take things away. I think some people that...
And he can.
He can. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. He has the power to do so. But at least for me, a lot of things, he does want to heal me. He does want to work in me. But he wants to go through it with me. And I have found that when that happens, when I have to work through something, it's more likely to not get reinfected.
And good.
I was just going to say, because when working on it, when he works on something with me, with my knowledge and the introspection, looking at it, looking right at the wound, he takes care of the infection, and he takes care of the thing that caused the infection. So it's not a superficial, it's not putting salve on it and Band-Aid. It's still infected, but it's got a Band-Aid on it, so I can't see it as much. It's actually taking care of what caused it in the first place.
Yeah. And I was going to say, in the bonding that you have with God as you're working through it, it's a part of the relationship, and it makes it so sweet and deeper. And gosh, it makes me grateful for the hard things that I've had to go through, and thankful that God comes alongside us, and invites us to join him in looking at those things and digging at the splinters and finding the root of stuff. Yeah, I can't imagine having a relationship with him without that. So
Amen. So just to be clear, I see your comment, Glenn, in the chat before we move on. Which comment do you want me to say for next week? I said a few things there.
probably the one that we just said, maybe.
The part about the wound and stuff with God, that one.
But the same goes for relationships. If there's a splinter within a relationship between two people,
Oh yeah.
you can put a band-aid on it and act like it's not there.
Ooh.
Or you can come together as a couple or as friends or as family members, and hopefully both people are wanting to put in the work and dig together at the root of it.
Mhm.
And again, when you work through those things, and a lot of times it's hard and difficult and painful, but when you work through them and you get to the other side, it is so daggone sweet. It
Yes.
just, and you feel closer. It just binds you closer together. And gosh, I wouldn't want it any other way.
Yes. I
Um,
completely agree. That I like what you did there, changing it off the spiritual side and put it into relationships. That was good. Yeah, if there is a wound or an infection in a relationship, it doesn't go away by just ignoring it. In fact, the infection gets worse and it festers, and then it's gangrene, and then you end up severing the relationship. I mean, really, if it's
Yeah.
if it's not looked at and dealt with, it can end up in being a severing,
Yeah,
cutting
bad
off.
place.
Yeah. Okay, Glenn. If one has lack of self-worth and lives in doubt of self and others, will any amount of evidence? Oh, I was going to answer. Sorry, let me finish this first, and then I'll come to you, Glenn. I did say that it could change, but yes, evidence persuades. If you're willing to look at it, evidence coming in, you take it on board. Evidence can change everything, as Journey's Wake said earlier, so wisely, in my opinion. Evidence or knowledge. He used the word knowledge, but to me, they're the same thing. Evidence and knowledge are similar. I guess they're not. They're related. Evidence comes first, and the knowledge of the evidence, what you do with the evidence, becomes knowledge. You know it then, but it does persuade, and it can change. That's all I want to say. So, Glenn, if one has a lack of self-worth and lives in doubt of self and others, will any amount of evidence persuade otherwise? Or, I would say or is it that doubt and lack of trust is in self is a state of mind?
Yeah, I think and/or is probably a better way of looking at it. I can see that if you are evolving as a person, not necessarily evidence, but just in general in self evolution, that can influence. But I think it's how you view that evolution from the mindset is what really determines where you sit. Because you can, as you know, with the Bible, you can interpret it in a number of ways. So each person has to interpret the information that's presented to them, and they may not even need information. So my gut feel says it's more inclined towards a state of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think the three of us are pretty much in agreement there from this side of the fence, at least. Okay, so we can move past that one. Next one is, think about it in your life. Is there any person, any relationship, any experience, anything that you have absolutely no doubt about within the framework of human imperfection? Or do you believe that each and every life relationship has an element of doubt embedded within it? No exceptions. I've been waiting for this one. This is, to me, this is fun to talk about. And I'll go first. Think about it in your life. Is there any person, any relationship, any experience, anything that you have absolutely no doubt about within the framework of human imperfection? I'll save the God part about it for next week, but I may steal this question because it does relate to the spiritual part. Yes, the answer to that is yes. There are a few people that I have absolutely no doubt about, and Jen is one of them. I have not for a single second, even in the beginning. Now, I have to talk about the God perspective because I don't believe that I was capable of not doubting, Jen, just because of the experiences I've had with other people. It wasn't like I came into the relationship just being a totally trusting person. Now, I hear from my mother, and I do have some memory of when I was a kid before I got beat up by the world and betrayed by other people. I had a trust. I was everybody's friend. I wanted new experiences. I wanted to be on that level. And I pray and hope that as I mature, I'm able to do that again, knowing that people are fallible and I have to hedge my expectations of other people. And by doing so, it changes how I view them. And in that way, it will come back around to it when Glenn talks. He's talked before about the way he looks at it. And honestly, I wish I could do that. I wish I could just come into relationships not doubting, and then I don't doubt until they give me reason to change the way I view it. But to protect myself, I don't know how to do that. I think I've learned a lot more than I used to. But very few, I would say that very few people do I have no doubt about. I don't want to doubt. Like I said, I want to be a trusting person. I want to go into relationships not thinking, hey, is this person going to stab me in the back? But even recently, I mean, I've had experiences, not going to go into a big long thing, but I've had experiences with people that I decided to trust. This is what it comes down to. It wasn't that I intrinsically trust these people. It's that I decided to because it felt weird for me not to. And because I have a desire to trust people, especially in Christian circles, I want to trust people that if they say that they're a believer and they say they have a relationship with God, I want to trust that. I do. There's a part of me that really wants that to be true. And then, but when I did get betrayed and there was some backstabbing going on, I realized that I didn't really fully ever trust them because it didn't hurt as much as other times in my life when I was betrayed. It's almost like there's an expectation that there will be betrayal. But from at least Jen and maybe one or two other people that I know, I do have no doubt about them. Any person, any relationship, any experience, anything that you have absolutely no doubt about within the framework of human imperfection. Now, I know that Jen's not perfect. She is pretty close, in my opinion. That's my opinion. And she probably wouldn't agree with me, but there are certain things that I don't think she's capable of doing. I just don't think she's capable. I could be wrong, but the way that I saw her from the beginning, I feel like God revealed to me things that I could have not known otherwise about her. And the evidence since then has only confirmed that. So my answer to the first part is yes, there are some. And then the second part, do you believe that each and every relationship has an element of doubt embedded within it? No exemptions. No, I just talked about one that didn't have any element of doubt embedded within it. But just about every other relationship, I do feel like there is, at least in the back of my mind, a bit of doubt about them, of whether they can be trusted or not. Again, I don't want that. I want to be able to trust people, but if I'm being honest, I'm sorry, I got distracted. Gia loves Jesus just said, spoken like a true newlywed, Jason. That's true.
That's funny. She's
Hasn't
getting an
been.
LOL from me.
Yeah, that was great. I'm so glad you come, Gia. I'm so glad that you. I'm glad that everyone feels safe enough to come in and make comments in here. It just warms my heart. Thank you guys, each and every one of you who come. Okay. Element of doubt. What, I was in the middle of something, wasn't I? I just lost my train of thought. That's okay. Jen? Wait,
for the
I went first. I went first. Sorry.
Yeah, you
Go ahead.
went first. So the first part, yes, and I would definitely add Jason to that. I can't say it as beautifully as you did. You just
Oh,
explained it so well. Now, the second part of this question's got my brain hurting.
okay.
Can you break this down for me? Do you believe
Sure.
that each and every life relationship has an element of doubt embedded within it, no exemptions?
Yeah. So that's just saying it's kind of opposed to the first. The first comment is that are there anyone that you have absolutely no doubt about? And then the second one is do you believe that each and every relationship that you encounter, whether it be friendship, family, marriage, or love relationships, are embedded with doubt? Like they automatically, intrinsically have a bit of doubt in them, and there are no exemptions. Like it's against the comment above says that you do have at least one person that's doubt that you don't doubt.
Okay.
And Glenn, correct me if I'm not getting this right. I think I have it right. So the bottom one, exemptions, just means there's no
No exemptions,
right.
meaning there's that everybody that's in your
That's
life.
right. That's
In
right.
other words, you consider that there's doubt everywhere in the human angle or the human realm or whatever you want to call it. Anything human has a doubt embodied within it. Yeah.
What do you think?
You're asking me for an answer?
No.
No. I'm still mulling. Glenn, can you go? I'm
Yeah,
chewing.
sure.
My brain's chewing.
Sure.
I think more than anything else, this is the one question that I've thought more about than any other, like in the show, because and how it came down was, is there any situation or any relationship, any person that I would actually be prepared to put my life on the line for? Now, of course, you'd lay down your life for your children, I mean, without hesitation. But if we exclude that, I would say that, and I've said before, my wife, Sandra, there is one spiritual in my belief system that fits the bill. But when I thought about it today, I thought my mum and dad and my brother as well, because I have absolutely no doubt about them either. So I'd say there's definitely no doubt. It wouldn't even come into my consideration that I would doubt them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Not at all. So I don't agree with the second part of the question. I think there are situations where it can be free of doubt for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yep.
So yeah, I would disagree with the second part of the question as well.
Okay.
So Glenn, you said something that piqued my interest. So you were saying laying down your life for somebody. So are you saying that you wouldn't lay your life down for someone that you did doubt?
No, I'm saying that was the criteria that I used to not doubt them.
Okay.
Like,
Okay.
and probably the closest one on here would be Janet. She'd be mighty close.
Wow.
Wow.
You hear that, Janet? That was nice.
But I said that to you within how did I not say that to you on the first time I spoke with Janet?
Yeah, like 9 minutes or something. I could be wrong.
Oh, I've been adamant right the way through. Nothing has changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you take it on board as a feeling sometimes, and you just don't doubt it.
Absolutely true. You know it. You don't. So
Yeah.
therefore, if you know it, you don't doubt it.
Right. Okay. Any more, Jen, on your part?
Nope. My brain is thoroughly scrambled. No. That's the way I like it.
Yeah. Scrambled cheese.
Yeah.
Okay, think about it. Okay, wait, is that a different question? State of mind, think about it, no doubt. Okay, I read that one. That's good. I mean, what criteria do you use to decide whether a relationship is worth pursuing or not? That's another good one.
Authenticity.
Mm,
That's mine. I don't expect people to like bust out all the skeletons in their closet the first time I meet them per se.
right.
But you do get a sense from people if they're genuine. I don't know how my brain computes that. It's just a sense, I guess, from
Sure.
practice or experience, exposure
Sure.
to people in general.
Yeah.
And being really hurt, being really abused, being used as a doormat. I think that helps you sharpen your skills of discernment
Yeah.
and
That's great.
you know So yeah, authenticity is a big one for me. Just
Mm,
people being genuine, being themselves, and yeah, not shady.
love it. Love it. Thank you, Jen. And I would have to copy you. That word has been big in our conversation between the three of us, at least since 2017. So for 3 years of conversations between the three of us, the authentic thing, and I brought that in. It was something that I was thinking about and looking at for a long time. The whole idea of when I started TSL at Blog Talk and telling stories, I wanted true, authentic stories. And that just morphed into so many other areas. And I realized that, oh, hey, it's not just the stories I want to be authentic. I want the people to be authentic too. And realizing that there aren't too many people that live an authentic life. There are so many areas in people where they're artificially sweetened. It's something that they put in to replace what should be existing there to make it seem like it's authentic, but it's really not. So that's a big one, someone being authentic. Now, this may be the same thing, authentic and honest. Honesty is a huge thing. I think it's related at least to being authentic. And also bringing things to the table. Now, this was something, that terminology Glenn actually brought into our conversations because it was in answer to how he deals with conflict. By bringing whatever it is, if you have a conflict with someone or you're upset about something they do, you bring it to the table, you lay it all out there, and you sit down at the table and you talk about it until it gets worked out. I'm paraphrasing you, Glenn, but that's pretty close if I remember correctly. That really was meaningful to me, and through that, I thought, you know what, that's what I want. So when Jen and I started our relationship, we talked about it and we decided this is who we want to be as people. We want to be authentic. We want to be honest, and we don't want to. I can hear you clacking on the keys, Glenn. Please,
I always picture Kermit the Frog going crazy on a typewriter.
It's very loud and distracting. Right.
Just mute yourself, Glenn.
Just mute while you're clacking.
I know you're telling me to shut up. Okay, I'll do it.
No, just the clacking. Just the clacking. So authenticity, honesty, bringing it to the table, those are all extremely important.
And it works.
It works. So when Jen and I started our relationship, we both decided that this is who we wanted to be. Thank you. I got my train of thought back. This is what we wanted to be. We don't want to stuff our feelings. We don't want to hide things. Whatever it is, it's better to bring it out and talk about it right then. Because if you don't, it becomes, like we discussed earlier, becomes that stagnant, infected wound that you just ignore. And then eventually it busts. It's like a boiler that's ignored. I've used that analogy before. So if you bring it to the table right away, you're not ever letting it get to the point where it explodes or gets infected or boils over. It does work. It absolutely does work. It's worked every time. Neither of us hold feelings in. I mean, we had a conversation tonight. It was something fairly small. Jen, do you want to share what I shared with you? Is that pertinent to this?
Yeah. Do you want me to share or you want to share?
If you'd like to, sure.
Yeah. No, we have this, what would you call it? Like dinner time.
Dinner time. Yeah.
Where we sit down and watch The Office. And it's kind of our bubble, our time to hang out and spend time together. And I was reading something to Jason that was sort of, I don't know, what would the word be? Kind of kicking up some stuff.
Yeah.
And it just sort of popped the bubble of our special snuggle dinner office time.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make all of you barf. But and I think for Jason it was sort of like a little, sometimes when something irritates you or kind of, I don't know if irritation's the right word, but just kind of, I don't know, what would you, yeah, tweaks you.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes in couples you can push that stuff away and push it down.
Sure.
But then the next time it happens, it tweaks you a little bit more and you stuff it down. And the next time it happens, it just keeps growing.
Yeah.
So Jason, in this decision that we've made with bringing stuff to the table as soon as we feel it emotionally, he actually started off the conversation. He said, "You know what? I don't know if this is anything big. Might be kind of small. I'm not like super upset or anything about it,
Right.
but I just want to bring it to the table and share it with you." And he shared it with me, and it's also allowing for there an opportunity to share expectations and
Hmm.
maybe even expectations that he didn't realize. So we just chatted about it, and I validated his feelings and said, "Yeah, I can completely understand why that would have tweaked you, and we don't have to discuss those types of conversations that kind of kick up emotions while we're having our dinner and our one-on-one time." So it was good. We just rolled past it, and it was great.
It was
And I
great.
thanked him. I mean, every time this happens, we thank each other, and we're both very appreciative of taking the time to bring it up, even if it's small. Because if it's your feelings and you love the other person, their feelings are still important. It's you want them to bring it up before it becomes something big. So
Absolutely. And you totally did validate me, and you handled your end of it very well, which I appreciate. That makes me feel comfortable, even if it's not a huge deal. Makes me feel comfortable bringing it up in the
yeah,
first place.
and it's like building blocks so that when you have that one moment where it's a safe place for both of you to share and it's
Mhm.
received well and you have a conversation and you move on, it's like a building blocks of a safe house. So the next time he gets tweaked, because of all the other times behind it where we've had great conversations and have communicated
Mhm.
calmly and lovingly, it makes the next time even easier to bring up. Whereas the opposite, it gets worse. Like the more you push down and then you got this long list of grievances and you explode, then it makes the next time bringing up your feelings even harder because it tears down that safe place.
Absolutely. And it's so important to me that I would never allow that to happen, to tear down what we have. We call it a bubble, you know, with all the stuff going on in the world. We call our life relationship or whatever, from the beginning, I called it a bubble. Certainly before we even got engaged, just when we were uh, in a relationship at the beginning, called it a bubble outside of the marriage part, and it has remained a bubble. And I wouldn't allow anything, at least on my part, to pop that or destroy that. And that does mean communicating properly. It does mean bringing things to the table and discussing it. It's very important.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw this while you're chuckling while you were talking, but TDE made a comment to you.
You don't
And
have to read it.
I don't?
No.
Okay. I won't then.
Okay.
Okay.
Move it
Glenn?
along.
Glenn?
Glenn?
What criteria do you use to decide whether a relationship is worth pursuing or not?
My trusty red flags.
Trusty red flags?
Yep. But I'll relate that experience we had at not experience, but that conversation we had when I said about how open a relationship is when you say what you really feel rather than try and just be nice. Like I said that I was going to Sydney on Friday to meet my son Jonathan. We were going to go and do a couple of things, go down to Chinatown, have a bit of lunch, have a chat, etc. And I said to you that Sandra said, "Oh, can I go for a ride? Go for the trip?" And I said, "No, I don't want you to because I want some space."
Right.
You know, most people would say, "Oh, that's selfish," but she didn't see it as selfish. She saw
Right.
it as just someone saying what they needed for themselves, and she's 100% in favour. That's to my mind, that's how it's meant to work. Where you declare yourself, you don't feel guilty,
Mhm.
you just and you put it onto the table. That is a huge difference from someone who's going to, pay out on you for weeks afterwards because you didn't do what they wanted.
Right.
So yeah, so red flags for me. It is.
Okay. Great.
Red flags. And Glenn, do you want to say something about how, because I'm still wrapping my brain around this comment that you shared. about trusting people. So Jason and I are coming from the perspective of we don't trust people until they prove that they're trustworthy.
Mhm.
But you've said that you trust people until they prove that they're not trustworthy.
Mhm.
Can you
Correct.
explain
I
that a
mean,
little more? That's
yeah,
just such an interesting perspective.
I mean, that's general. I mean, there's obviously exceptions at the end of the line, like as you would know, but we're talking in general terms. To my
Yeah.
mind, it's just so much easier and less energy just to say, I trust you. And if it comes out down the line that you have, we're not worthy of that trust, well, so be it. I just think if I'm constantly thinking, oh, I trust this person, or I trust that person, oh, every time I meet, oh, am I gonna trust this person? That's just a waste of my
Oh my
energy.
gosh, you sound like my brain.
I don't need it. I need the easy path of
It is
least
exhausting.
resistance. Least resistance, Jen.
Very good point. I'm gonna have to try that. I don't know if it'll work. Oh my goodness.
Now, on my end, it's not that I think all the time, like, do it. It doesn't go back and forth like that. I just come in and I definitely give people the benefit of the doubt at first. But I'm being intellectually honest by saying that in the back of my mind with new people, there's always the idea. I'm always prepared. It's like I'm bracing for the backstab. I absolutely am. And that's based on my experience with people in general. Very few people have I ever been around long enough where eventually there's not some kind of failure. Now, as I said earlier, I understand that people are fallible. I get that. They're broken. Everyone. And people may not agree with that, but that's my opinion and my perception of people. They're broken and they will fail you. You can't rely on anyone else. There are a few exceptions, but these are exceptions I'm willing to risk trusting Jen completely and risk being stabbed in the back. I don't believe that she ever would do that. I don't think it's in her to do it. And the more evidence I get, the more I am confident in that. It just confirms it for me. So it's not something that is in my mind all the time where I'm going back and forth as Glenn describes. Do I trust this person? Do I don't? Oh, now I trust them. Now I don't. No, that's not the way it is at all. I start out giving them the benefit of the doubt. I'm just being honest about saying that in the back of my mind, I'm ready. I'm ready to be stabbed. No doubt about it. Fisherman in the Box says, no man is good. Every man is a liar. That's always a good place to begin. I agree. I agree completely. And that would tie more into our part 2 next Sunday, which would be the spiritual topic and talking about where God fits into all this stuff. And so that's straight from the Bible. No man is good but God. Even Jesus said, why do you call me good? I mean, he is, but it's a good question, one that we'll discuss next week. But I agree with you. Fisherman in the Box. Love that guy. Okay. I think we all answered this one. Our criteria, yes. Okay, we're doing pretty good on time, I think. Might go a little bit over. Read the above question. It is our contention that any yes or no, accept or reject choice based on consideration of evidence is classified as a decision, agree or disagree. I'll read it again slower. Related to the above question, it is our contention that any yes or no, accept or reject choice based on consideration of evidence is classified as a decision, agree or disagree.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely agree. What about you?
Yeah. I think evidence plays a huge part. Now, we're with you, I didn't wait for the evidence to come. So the criteria that I saw before there was a whole lot of evidence. I mean, there were some at the beginning, some evidence. But with other people, like I said, I come into the relationship giving them the benefit of the doubt at first until there's enough evidence gathered. So I guess.
Wouldn't you say that God showing you that you could trust me was evidence?
Oh, yes. Yes, I would. Yeah. It's hard to split the two parts, the God part that we want to talk about next week,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the
it
other
is.
part. That's all. Yes, absolutely. But I would say that what he showed me wasn't a decision.
Okay.
I didn't have to decide. Like, I didn't say, okay, here's the evidence God's showing me. I decide to trust. It just is. It just was. It just was there. And I think that's true with God. And that's there's a lot of contention over this about spiritual matters and deciding whether you decide to accept the evidence provided of whether God is trustworthy or not, or whether it just reveals itself, whether God reveals it to you. So that'll, I can't wait to talk about it, but I'll try to save it for next week. Okay, so that's a short one. I do agree. I would say for the most part, accept or reject, yes or no. Accept or reject, choice based on consideration of evidence is classified as a decision. In almost every area, I would say that's true. Eventually, for me, there has to be a decision made on each person as to whether I can continue in a relationship with them or whether I need to cut ties, so to speak, to protect myself. All right, Glenn. This one seems to be going by pretty quickly, and then we only have
yeah. To keep it short, I agree, 100%.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Gia Loves Jesus says, I disagree. I disagree. Trust, it's a lifetime. I'm not sure I know what that means. I understand the disagree.
I think Gia might be coming from the God perspective. That's just a thought.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if you can twist your mind into this, Gia, but not from a God part, but in a personal relationships or a life situation. Can you answer it from that part about is it classified as a decision? Yeah, I don't know how else to phrase that, so I'll leave that there. And then Gia also says, Jason, please don't give Jen too much pressure if she disappoints you. So what, you're going to love her anyway? Absolutely.
And we talk about this a lot.
Yeah. I don't think I give her any pressure because I sure I have some expectations, but generally I try not to have expectations. This is something we talked about very early in our relationship. I brought it up that expectations damage relationships. I mean, if you have a bunch of expectations, and how much are you expecting the other person to do? And someone else, and I forget who, but they made a comment about me putting Jen on a pedestal because I was talking so highly of her. And I don't see it as that at all. I'm not putting her anywhere. She is where she is, just based on who she is.
And I don't hear that stuff and start shaking in my boots thinking, oh my gosh, I'm gonna disappoint him. I know there's gonna be times I screw up and disappoint him, and he knows that too, and vice versa.
Yeah.
But we know neither of us are perfect, and that I had a point and it just flew out of my head.
We know each of us is not perfect. We're talking about pedestals.
Yeah, and just accepting one another, that we're both human and that we do make mistakes, that it's never going to be out of, malice or spite. We know that neither of us come from that place.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like an acceptance thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not putting pressure on her, not putting her on a pedestal, but
And if you were, I would tell you.
Right. Right.
That's the key.
You would, yeah, because you're gonna bring it to the table. But I am gonna love her anyway, even if I'm disappointed by her, which hasn't happened yet. But even if I was disappointed, I've told her several times, and this is still true. I believe I have a lot of grace towards her, and it hasn't even tapped into that. It hasn't even gotten to the point where I needed to use any grace towards her. It just is the way that it is. It hasn't even touched my reserve of grace.
Yeah. And I could see how that could put pressure on somebody, if you're speaking highly of someone, and maybe if a person didn't quite understand. I just could see how somebody could come from a different perspective of thinking, oh my gosh, he's speaking so highly of me. I better watch what I do. And what if I make a mistake and he gets pissed off and then he doesn't think these things about me anymore? And that kind of train of thought I could see, but I don't do that. And it's not because I'm like, oh, everything he's saying is correct. It's so awesome. It's just that I know that he knows that I'm human, that I'm going to make mistakes, but he knows my heart. He trusts where my heart's coming from.
Right. TDE asked a question. She says, this is very confusing. Who said you put Jen in a pedestal? I don't remember who it was that said it, but someone made the comment. Do you remember, Jen? I mean,
was it on a show?
I thought it was, but maybe I'm mistaken.
I don't remember.
Someone said, be careful putting her on a pedestal. It might have been Glenn. But unlike other people, I don't want to.
No way.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that.
Yeah. Yeah. I do trust, Glenn put in, Cripps just said he trusted Jen without doubt. Absolutely, I do. And if I was ever betrayed or whatever, then the grace that God has given me toward her would kick in. And yeah, so I'm not worried about that aspect of it at all. Okay. So I'm going to read these two things. It just occurred to me what I might do, with your permission, of course, Glenn, is I've changed some things around, but some of these questions could be easily used as is, in terms of from the spiritual side, just tweaking it a little bit. I don't want to steal your work, but these are some of them are great questions, like the one I'm going to read here. If you live with doubt, minimal self-worth, then you will likely seek evidence prior to making a decision about whether you should trust another or initiate a relationship with them. That could be a great question to explain the relationship with God. I mean, it absolutely could. And then if you live in a place of no doubt of self, then you are able to trust another implicitly without any decision to trust. Where does that come from? Feeling, intuition, knowing, belief, faith, etc. You tell me. Evidence is used after the fact as confirmation. That's all. So,
anyway, Cripps, you use what you make the decision. You use whatever you like.
Oh yeah, it
helps. Great. Yeah.
We'll talk about it. Jen and I will discuss it and decide. I'm just saying there's so many good things here, and it was very difficult.
It really is.
Not to talk about the God part this week, but I think we did a pretty good job of trying to separate the two so that there would be more to talk about it. That's a great comment. Gia Loves Jesus said, I can't fake trust. Yeah, who would want you to? I want people to trust completely. I certainly, when at least in terms of other people, I'm not faking trust with anyone, like I said, and you're not saying this, I'm just clarifying. I don't come on board with new people and pretending to trust them. It's that I give them the benefit of the doubt, but I'm prepared. I'm bracing for the possible betrayal. Yeah, so I wouldn't want anyone or ask anyone to fake trust. People will fail you for sure. All right, last question. This begs the tough question. What if initial trust and subsequent evidence are not in accord? Where does that leave us? Frightened to trust in case we are wrong. This is such a great question, and your write-ups are brilliant, Glenn. Honestly, I'm not trying to get your head any bigger than what it is, with all that arrogance and stuff kicking around in there already. That's a joke. This begs the tough question. What if initial trust and subsequent evidence are not in accord? Where does that leave us? Frightened to trust in case we are wrong. Jen? Jen?
Using the bathroom.
Oh, okay. Glenn, do you want to try this one first, or do you want me to go?
You go.
Okay. So it is kind of a tough question. What if initial trust and subsequent evidence are not in accord? Okay. So in terms of relationships and people, like I said, I come into a relationship giving them the benefit of the doubt, which means that I trust them, knowing that in the back of my mind, I'm prepared in case I can't. So I'm doing that first, initial trust, and then I wait for the evidence to come in. So if I'm still trusting the person, the evidence tells me I can't, then I might still stick it out. I might wait for more information. I might wait for more evidence. So if the evidence is not in accord with my level of trust, then I do trust myself generally in my relationships with other people, even if I don't trust them. So I would trust my heart or trust my gut, so to speak. And again, trying to save the God part, but I also would talk to God about it, and I would be taking that spiritual component on board as well. So I hope that answers it from that perspective. Where does that leave us? If it's not an accord, again, I wait for more evidence. I try not to make rush decisions. And I've even had relationships recently where a lot of other people were jumping ship with a certain person that they didn't want to be related to anymore or have a relationship with. And I see things in a different way and see things that I feel like they don't see, and decided to stick with it. There wasn't enough evidence for me to jump ship, so I didn't, and I'm glad that I didn't. But I would wait for more evidence. So if there's a discrepancy of the evidence and my level of trust, it just means that I need more evidence. So I'm not frightened to trust in case I'm wrong. Like I said, the way that I approach it has been pretty beneficial. Initial trust, prepared in case that there's a stabbing, and as the evidence continues to grow, then the idea of a stabbing becomes less and less until it disappears. Now that hasn't happened with too many people. I trust Glenn. They're still, just like with all other people, it's different with Glenn than it is with Jen. I don't feel like he'd ever purposefully hurt me or stab me in the back or anything like that. But just, I'm human. I am human. I am fallible. And there's just always this, if it ever happened, then there would be a part of me that said, yep, see, that's what it is. But there's also been a lot of evidence from Glenn's side that he can be trusted. A lot of evidence. So that weighs more heavy than that little part where I'm prepared or bracing. So it's a small thing for me. All right, Jen or Glenn?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I sort of set myself up for this one, because if I said that I initially trust everyone, well, then it would be apparently obvious that at some point evidence is not going to be in accord with initial trust.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose that's the cross you have to bear for being trusting up front, if you like.
Right.
Where does that leave me? Well, I stuffed it up.
Hmm.
Or did I? I just trust. Or maybe I didn't stuff it up. Maybe it was the other person who stuffed it up, not me.
Right.
I just trusted. They gave me the information that they weren't to be trusted. So I've got to take that back and say, well, geez, really, it's their problem, not mine.
Right.
Great point.
So that's not going to diminish my self-worth.
Sure.
Just because I trusted someone and then they betrayed that trust. I don't.
Right.
Am I frightened to trust goes wrong? Well, of course not. That doesn't make any sense. Otherwise, where does that leave you if you're not prepared to trust anyone? You'll never get there, and yet, and your existence is going to be pretty damn miserable, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're going to be living in your own little world forever. Don't like that idea. pretty much.
No.
Thanks.
Some people are
Sure.
like,
Thanks, man.
yes, my paradise.
Okay.
Jen?
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. What if they're not in accord? Where does that leave us?
Yeah. Your initial trust and the evidence that you find
Yeah, are not in accord.
right.
I think the old me probably would have been frightened
Mhm.
and frightened to trust in case
Sure.
I'm wrong.
Sure.
Now, gosh, there's this quote that keeps ringing in my head the last few days that it goes, when somebody tells you who they are, believe them, or shows you when they
Yeah.
show you. It's either show or tell,
Mhm.
show and tell.
Mhm.
So, if I trust someone and then they end up doing things that makes me realize that they're not trustworthy,
Mhm.
I think I used to take it really personally, like I had done something wrong. Um, and or just like got stuck on it, I guess. I would
Mhm.
just get stuck. And now it's more of like being grateful that the red flags popped up um when they did. And there's still a big part of my heart that does want to trust people. I know
Sure.
that trustworthy people are out there.
Sure.
I do think you have to earn trust, and I do think that you can lose trust depending on the things you do to other. Like if someone's lying to me or stealing or whatever, they can lose my trust, and that does happen. I wouldn't say that I'm frightened. Leaves me. It's difficult because I tend to want to go directly to just being on guard and having like just being what is the word hyper vigilant
Sure.
with like wide eyes looking around like oh my gosh who's
Right.
around the next corner to like
Right.
to do me wrong, but I trust myself in the sense of having educated myself in a lot of different areas like with manipulative people and red flags and all that kind of stuff. I've begun to trust myself and even God to help me see the red flags
Sure.
so that I don't get too far down in a friendship or relationship to where I'm a doormat again or being used and abused or manipulated.
Right.
But also when it does happen, because it does happen, it's
Mhm.
life and people are shady sometimes.
Yep.
Um, to pray for them and to learn something, take something from the situation and the experience, and just move on.
Yeah.
I do have an old tick where I want to get stuck on it. Like just the other day, I was talking with you about work stuff and sending an email to someone
Mhm.
that I work with and not getting
Right.
a response. They just didn't respond at all.
Mhm.
And I was like, "Ruh, ruh, 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 ruh," not angry, but like, I just was like, gosh, that's really rude. And it feels like they're just dismissing me, like they just could give a crap. There's no response. But then as I was talking it through, I was like, you know what? I can't walk around expecting other people to respond like I would because I
Right.
kept coming back to the same place of like, if I had gotten this kind of email, I would have at least responded and said, hey, I got it,
Mhm.
like, but crickets, like, that's just kind of rude and
Yeah.
dismissive.
Right.
But then in the same conversation as I was in the kitchen, I was like, you know what? I need to not expect everyone to do it like I would do it.
Mhm.
So anyway,
Sure.
there you
And
go.
that last part is great. I mean, not expecting other people to do it like you do. I mean, it can be somewhat difficult, but gosh, it saves you a lot of trouble if you don't put the expectations that you have on yourself onto other people, knowing that they're going to be different than you. They're not going to see things the way that you see it. You know, seems like that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Sure. All right. So I believe we all answered that last question.
All right.
And I read the quote already. So, as mentioned, next week, C and J are in the hot seat. No doubt they'll have a lot of great ideas, and I can sit back and relax. Nice. That's true. So, next week, we will be talking. This will be Doubt versus Decision Part 2. And we'll be discussing the spiritual component of a lot of this. I may use some of the questions as a base Certainly the definitions are useful because we'll be talking in terms of God and spirituality, of doubt and decision, and how self-worth enters into that as well. So I'm very much looking forward to it, and a very potentially contentious thing. But as I said, and I'll repeat this again next week before we talk about it, we're not trying to set absolutes here. This is all for discussion purposes. We want to come to the table and for everyone to discuss it. And tonight there were a lot of other conversations. I mean, some people made comments, but there wasn't as much to read and include tonight, and that's totally fine. That's not the way it goes every time. So we had plenty to draw from and discuss, the three of us, from the write-up. So
Yep.
I'm grateful for that. All right. So I want to thank everyone who came and visited with us in the chat. And for anyone listening to the playback, thank you for stopping by and listening to our little broadcast, True Story Live. Again, join us next week for Doubt versus Decision Part 2. And then we will be going back. Glenn has one more show in his quiver that he's already been working on, reconciliation versus estrangement. And so that'll be what we'll be discussing 2 weeks from tonight. So there we have it.
All right.
If you guys have any comments, I mean, we always love comments in the chat. If you want to make your comments there, we do go and listen to the show again and look at the comments. And Glenn does a lot of that. Looks at the comments to pick up ideas for other shows or questions that need to be answered in the future, things like that. You can also always send us an email. My email address for the show is truestorylive.cripps@gmail.com. truestorylive.cripps@gmail.com. You can just send an email there. If you want to send something, I mean, Glenn and Jen are always able to put their own personal email in there if you want. But if you don't want me to read it, just put in the subject line for Jen's eyes only or for Glenn's eyes only, and I'll be more than happy. I will not read it. I'll just forward it immediately. Okay, well, Glenn just put his email in there, so that's fine. So if you guys want to send a email directly to him, because he does answer them and talk to people, and I do as well. I believe he's talking a lot with Nathan, and I know he has a relationship with Janet. And Janet, I was just talking before the show that I didn't respond to your email yet, so I do apologize for that, and I will get to that first of the week here. So thank you for your patience. I appreciate that. I wasn't ignoring you, just hadn't got to it yet. We've had kind of a weird week. No excuse, because I have had time to return an email for sure. All right.
All right.
All right. So we'll start with Glenn. Glenn, say goodnight to the people, sir.
Good night, and thank you so much for coming and sharing. Geez, it seems to get better each week, and really quite thrilled with it, really, actually. So yeah, hope next week's going to be a bonza, as we would say here in Australia.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
You better come up with the goods, Cripps and Jenn. I'll be waiting.
You will.
Good night.
Thank you, Glenn. Jen, my lovely wife.
Oh, good night, you guys. Hopefully we didn't make you too sick with our lovey-dovey, but get over it.
There was less. There was only one even close.
No, I'm just kidding, guys. Thanks for hanging in there, and thanks for just coming out tonight, being a part of the discussion and sharing in the chat and sharing y'all's thoughts and ideas and feelings and experiences. Your stories matter. Things that you guys deal with and go through in life matter, and we want to hear about it. So we appreciate you coming and listening to us share and being a part of the discussion. Good night, guys.
Thanks, Jen. And as usual, thank you again for joining us tonight. We appreciate each and every one of you. And I do see that a lot of you have put a like, and we appreciate that. And I'm sure most of you are subscribed. So if you do like the show and think it might benefit someone else, please tell other people. And before you leave, definitely stop by and drop a like in there. We appreciate that as well. And we will see you guys next week, next Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for part 2, Doubt versus Decision. And like Glenn said in the write-up, we're in the hot seat. So this will be the first show, at least. I wrote shows when we were over at Blog Talk, but pretty much since we started TSL, it's all been Glenn. So I feel like I can handle it. I've written a lot of plays and produced them and things like that. So I have some experience in that, short stories and poems and all that. So it can't be too difficult. I'm not downplaying it because I know that Glenn puts a lot of time into these broadcasts. You can really tell from the way they're constructed, and we so appreciate it. Don't take it lightly at all. So thank you, Glenn, for helping with that. And that's it, guys. All right. So I hope everyone has a great rest of the Sunday. There's not much of it left, about 11:45 Eastern Time for us. And we'll see you again in a week from tonight. Thank you for joining. Until then, good night and God bless.